Chapter 1843. 2 days later, Bao and Zhu Sheng battled. Bao was still very confident in this battle. First of all, she was superior to Zhu Sheng in terms of cultivation level. She knew all about Zhu Sheng's talent and emperor techniques. Of course, Zhu Sheng was also aware of Bao's talent and ability. The only thing she needed to be careful of was that Yunro had privately summoned Zhu Sheng. She must have given her some powerful artifact. Soon 2 days passed. On this day, the elders and disciples gathered at the 100 Spirits Temple. The ceremony was extremely solemn. Everyone was looking forward to this battle. The arena was still presided over by the Grand Elder. "What do you think of this battle?" An elder asked with a smile. Both of them have cultivated with the Island Lord and are proficient in the same emperor techniques. However, one is in the 6th tier of Dao validation, while the other is in the 7th tier. Bao has a better chance of winning. Someone expressed his opinion. The others nodded. Even if they cultivated the same emperor techniques, Bao grew up in the 100 Spirits Island. On the other hand, Zhu Sheng had only been in the sect for 10 years. Her foundation in emperor techniques was definitely not as deep as Bao's. Moreover, the elders had watched Bao grow up and naturally hoped that she would win. Everyone believed that only Bao could shoulder the pride of the 100 Spirits sect. However, this battle was definitely not as simple as it seemed. The Island Lord would definitely create some restrictions and trouble for Bao. Therefore, even if she won, it would not be easy. Tell me, which of the 2 senior sisters will become the lead disciple? Is there need to ask? It will definitely be senior sister Bao. The elders have privately said that senior sister Bao's talent is rare. No matter what she learns, she can use it easily. However, I heard from the senior sisters that the Island Lord seems to have bestowed a powerful emperor technique to senior sister Zhu Sheng. The emperor weapon is to make up for the difference in cultivation level between the two. However, some differences cannot be made up for by emperor weapons. This is a little worrying. The disciples were also discussing. Like the elders, they unanimously believed that Bao had a higher chance of winning. However, if she wanted to defeat Zhu Sheng, she would probably have to pay a price. Bao Zhu Sheng. The great elder floated in the air above the training ground, the sovereign lord's light shining around her. Her aura contained a shocking pressure. She looked at the 2 people on the training ground and said, "This battle will decide who the first seat of Bai Ling will be. You 2 must not hold back. You must give it your all." Bao and Zhu Sheng stood at the 2 ends of the training hall and looked at each other. They nodded at the same time. In the Phoenix Flower 9 Veins martial competition, the lead disciples of the various islands would not care what realm the opponent was at. There was also no such thing as suppressing one's cultivation. Everyone would use their full strength to fight. Otherwise, it would be a blasphemy to the Dream Branch. Therefore, Bao and Zhu Sheng would not show mercy. In this battle, both of you should give it your all. However, during the battle, Bao is not allowed to use any of the other 8 lineages. Great Elder said seriously, establishing a rule. Yin Bao was born in the 100 Spirit Island and grew up in the 9 Veins of the Phoenix Flower Island. She had dabbled in the martial arts of all the islands and was proficient in the 9 Veins of the Phoenix Flower Island. To Zhu Sheng, this was very dangerous. Since the 100 Spirit Island had decided on the position of chief disciple, they would use the 100 Spirit Island's martial arts to determine their martial arts. "Master, this is unfair to junior sister Bao." Lilifeng stood out and said. She was 10 years older than Bao and was the eldest senior sister of Bai Ling. Since it was the 9 Veins martial competition, both Bao and Zhu Sheng would face the other 8 lineages' ultimate arts in the 9 Islands arena. Why was Bao not allowed to use any of them today? Restriction. Obviously, it was restricting Bao from using her full strength. Island Lord's will. Do you have any objections? Great Elder said unhappily and stared at Lilifeng. She had no reason to stick her head out. "No, I have no objections." Lilifeng's body trembled. She secretly looked at Bao and then retreated. At this moment, Bao looked at the Bai Ling Hall above the training ground and scanned back and forth. However, she did not see Yunro. She smiled helplessly and said, "It's okay. If I'm not allowed to use it, then I won't. If I use the Nine Veins Emperor's art to suppress Zhu Sheng, it will seem like I'm bullying her." The Great Elder did not know what to say. In fact, Bao could use the Nine Veins Emperor's art as she wished. The Island Lord's actions were indeed biased towards Zhu Sheng. "Great Elder, does that mean that I can use any cultivation technique other than the Windflower Emperor's art?" Bao raised her head and asked. "This?" The Great Elder was stunned. The Island Lord did not say how to reply. "Permitted." At this moment, a dignified voice sounded from the Bailing Hall. "Permitted." The Great Elder repeated and heaved a sigh of relief. "Then let's begin. Junior sister, you have to be careful." Bao rubbed her fist and looked at Zhu Sheng. In fact, among all the cultivation techniques, she did not seriously cultivate the cultivation techniques of the other 7 islands except for the first Phoenix Flower Island. Even so, she was very familiar with the cultivation techniques of the other 7 islands. However, other than the 100 Spirit Flower Plucking Hand, Bao most powerful technique was the martial arts taught by the simple-minded uncle. Therefore, this restriction did not affect her too much. "The person who should be careful is you, senior sister. I have a Dharma treasure given to me by Master. You have nothing," Zhu Sheng said confidently and did not hide her trump card at all. "Come, let me give you some guidance today. If you lose, don't say that I'm a level higher than you." Bao got into a fighting stance, and the 7 Emperor's rings slowly appeared under her feet. In an instant, the training hall erupted with a brilliant Emperor's light, and many flower petals fell from the void. "Whether you win or lose, you're a level higher than me anyway. If you lose, you'll lose even more face," Zhu Sheng said. The Emperor's rings bloomed, and 6 halos appeared under her feet. Endless flower petals fell from the sky and bathed her body. The flower celestial art was a cultivation technique that the disciples of the 9 Veins cultivated together. It was the general outline of the Phoenix Flower Sect's cultivation techniques and the foundation of the sect. Chapter 1844. The flower deity formula was profound and all-encompassing. Many of the ultimate techniques of the 9 veins of the phoenix flower were derived from the flower deity formula. For example, the 100 Spirits Veins flower picking hand was fierce and overbearing. Another example was the Phoenix Cloud swordplay of the Phoenix Flower Veins, the head of the 9 islands. The 9 veins innovated from the foundation of the flower deity formula, taking one of its essences to create an ultimate technique of the island. It was enough to show the profundity and power of this technique. The flower deity formula was the cornerstone of the 9 veins cultivation. The depth of the technique often determined the strength of the realm. This was similar to the indestructible samsara technique. When the technique was perfected, it could increase the cultivation of the martial artist by 1 cycle. At this time, Bao and Zhu Sheng were both using the flower deity formula. Both of them were glowing and bathed in the endless light of the flowers. Their temperaments changed drastically. They were like 2 fairies from the 9 heavens, beautiful and divine. Waves of Emperor Qi flowed from the imperial ring beneath Zhu Sheng. She stretched out her palm and slashed across the air. In the air, a formless claw force suddenly moved forward and grabbed Bao's vitals. It was ferocious and overbearing. Bao attacked at the same time. Dilly's winding body raised its slender hand, and the 100 Spirits flower-picking hand smashed forward. A scream came from the training hall. A ball of intense light exploded and dissipated in the center. It was deafening. Zhu Sheng walked forward, her palms turning illusory as waves of terrifying claw force flew out crazily. Dense sounds of breaking through the air could be heard from the training hall. The expressions of the disciples changed. In just a short moment, they did not know how many attacks Zhu Sheng had unleashed. Her use of the flower-plucking hand to such an extent was something that none of the thousands of disciples in Bailing could match. Even Li Lufeng could not do what she did. "Junior sister, it's too flashy." Bao was calm. She smiled and slowly raised her palm above her head. Whoosh! A strong light blade slashed out from her palm. It was extremely sharp. The space was cut in half. Countless sparks exploded on the light blade, but it could not slow it down. It slashed directly in front of Zhu Sheng. Zhu Sheng's eyes narrowed. She had launched so many attacks. Were they all destroyed? A strong sense of danger came. Zhu Sheng's heart seemed to be suffocating. She faced the light blade and did not dodge. Her hands smashed forward, and her body erupted with a violent Emperor's light. Everyone saw two dazzling claw-shaped lights fly out of her hands, trying to crush the light blade. Instant, Bauer said calmly. The speed of the light blade suddenly increased, causing people to be unable to react in time. It turned into a ray of light that deviated slightly, passing through the two claw-like light claws and slashing at Zhu Sheng's head. Zhu Sheng's expression changed as he raised his hands and grabbed at the sky. Intense Emperor light surged from his palms. Bang! A heavy blow was heard. Zhu Sheng staggered a few steps back and let out a muffled groan. At the same time, the two claws that failed to stop the light blade also reached Bao Er's throat. However, the claws were repelled by Bao Er's protective barrier. Zhu Sheng is at a disadvantage if he doesn't use the laws of Emperor intent and only relies on his Dao validation realm. Not only that, Bao Er's usage and understanding of the flower-picking hand also exceeded Zhu Sheng's expectations. She could clearly determine where the opponent's attack would land, and thus control the attack to skillfully avoid it. She could predict the enemy's movements and figure out the enemy's psychology. On the contrary, Zhu Sheng is lacking in this aspect. The elders commented. Bao Er's control over the situation was very strong, but this was not because of her battle experience. After all, Bao had never experienced real life and death battles in the outside world with other sect. This was her innate awareness of the strong. Boom! A wave of Emperor Spirit power erupted from the field. Around Zhu Sheng's body, endless green Dao radiance rolled and spread, and a bamboo forest appeared. Looking from the spectator's stand, half of the field was covered by the bamboo forest, and it was filled with extremely powerful Dao will of life. Bao Er had the advantage in fighting Dilly. If Zhu Sheng wanted to win this battle, she had to start with the laws of Dao will. Just now, for the sake of fighting spirit, she fought with Bao Er head-on and ended up at a disadvantage. Go! Zhu Sheng's Dao validation Emperor intent emanated from her body. As her voice fell, the bamboos that grew out of thin air behind her rose from the ground like sharp thorns, covering the sky and the sun. They all fell towards Bao Er's position. Oh, the rules. Bao Er smiled and stepped forward quickly. Even if she did not inherit her father's supreme technique, the divine steps, her speed was so fast that no one could catch her. She brought out a blurry afterimage in the field. Swoosh! 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 Countless sharp bamboos fell. Bao Er dodged left and right, dodging every single one of them. She was like a female assassin shuttling through the bamboo forest, madly closing in on Zhu Sheng. The distance between the two kept shrinking. Is senior sister's zodiac a rabbit? Zhu Sheng's laws of Dao could not keep up with Bao Er's speed. At this moment, she pointed her finger forward. Suddenly, countless terrifying vines rolled out from the green training ground and wrapped around Bao Er's legs and body, trapping her in the middle. Bao Er's figure suddenly froze. She realized that she had been tied up. At this moment, dense sounds of killing came from above her head again. Looking up, the sky above the training ground was covered by bamboo thorns, turning into a boundless green ocean. Break! Bao Er shouted. The Emperor's spirit in her body exploded. A layer of blood-red flames spread out wildly. The vines that wrapped around her legs, arms, and body were all burned to ashes. She stepped on the training ground and soared into the sky like the sun rising from the east. Her body was covered in raging flames, and it was extremely spectacular. At this moment, the terrifying flames dispersed the green sky. Every time Bao Er's position rose, the sky above the training ground would become even redder. It was like a burning sea of fire was invading everything. The bamboo thorns were still falling. However, when they came into contact with Bao Er's protective flames, they were all melted and incinerated. Zhu Sheng's laws of Tao could not hurt her at all. This made Zhu Sheng's expression gradually turn ugly. Boom! The terrifying flames blasted down. Bao punched out, and the demonic flames in the sky rolled. It was like a river of lava pouring into the training ground. The bamboo forest was incinerated and turned into nothingness. The fire crazily swallowed forward, wanting to bury Zhu Sheng in it. Sister Bao is so strong. She's just like a monster. The difference between Dilly, a 6th-tier Dao proving realm cultivator, and a 7th-tier Dao proving realm cultivator is actually negligible. Countless female disciples below the training ground looked fearful and retreated. Although they were far away from the training ground, the scorching aura of the demonic flames made them feel extremely uncomfortable. No one wanted to fight against Bao in this life. At this moment, Bao Er's fist blasted down, almost incinerating the bamboo forest. Then, she used the 100-spirit flower plucking hand. Her 5 fingers smashed out. With the support of the Red Lotus Overlord Fire, the power of the flower-plucking hand increased by more than several times. A flame-shaped claw shot out. No matter how many layers of bamboo defenses Zhu Sheng laid out, they were still easily penetrated. This made her expression more and more ugly, and the sense of crisis was extremely strong. This scene made many elders exclaim and praise in their hearts. Bao was indeed the descendant of that person. Her talent and soul power were simply terrifying. Many elders had participated in the God Burial ruins 20 years ago and had also witnessed the fierce battle between Dindi and the Battle Tower in the God Burial Valley. The aura of Bao Er's Dao fire was carved from the same mold as Qin House. There was no doubt that Dindi was her biological child. Junior sister, are you still not going to admit defeat? Bao said in a low voice from high up in the sky. Demonic flames curled around her body, invisibly increasing her domineering aura. Impossible. Zhu Sheng clenched her teeth tightly. Her forehead was roasted by the scorching Dao insight, causing a layer of sweat to seep out. However, she would absolutely not admit defeat. Her master had high hopes for her in this battle. She wanted to defeat Yin Bao. A ball of light bloomed above Zhu Sheng's palm, condensing into a green staff. Suddenly, the Dao will of life erupted. She swung the staff heavily at the red lotus flower plucking hand. Bang! A ball of flames exploded, and Zhu Sheng retreated a few steps. However, this attack directly scattered the red lotus will of life, successfully restraining Bao Er's attack. The Staff of Longevity. Bao looked slightly surprised as she looked at the staff in Zhu Sheng's hand. It was a staff made from the trunk of a strange divine tree and infused with the Dao will of life of an almighty emperor. This ritual implement's power was extraordinary, and it had a powerful amplification effect. Mother has put in a lot of effort. Isn't she afraid that I'll burn the Staff of Longevity? Bao turned to look at the Great Hall. The longevity tree was almost extinct, and the Staff of Longevity in Zhu Sheng's hand was probably the last one left in the world. Mother had given it to Zhu Sheng. How much did she want her to win? However, even with the Staff of Longevity in her hand, Zhu Sheng was still destined to be disappointed by her mother. Senior sister, I'm going to start beating you up. With the Staff of Longevity in her hand, surges of Dao will of life surged into her body. It was extremely comfortable. Zhu Sheng felt that the Dao will in her body was unprecedentedly strong. She leaped up and reached the same height as Bao. She waved the Staff of Longevity in her hand, stirring up the majestic Dilly. A boundless green bamboo forest appeared behind her, and the strong bamboo grew rapidly. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a towering divine tree. Even the bamboo leaves glowed with a terrifying sharp light. At this moment, Zhu Sheng's aura was no weaker than Bao's. With the boost from the Staff of Longevity, the power of her Dao will even surpass Bao's. Bao's talent is too strong. She has perfectly inherited Dindi and Han Er's bloodline. The Flames of the Way are just one of her abilities. Her spiritual energy is also terrifying. If Zhu Sheng wants to defeat her, she must use force and completely suppress her Tao will. Otherwise, other methods won't work on Bao. In the 100 Spirits Hall, Island Lord Yin stood behind the window on the upper floor of the hall and watched the battle seriously. Now, her aura and figure had become more mature and dignified than 20 years ago. She was the one who raised Bao. No one in the world knew her child better than her. Whether it was Tao will or spiritual energy, Bao could completely defeat the Archiyuan of the same realm. The grade of her Tao flame was ridiculously strong. It was like the legendary red lotus tyrannical fire. Moreover, Bao imperial body was also very strong. She was born with brute strength that didn't lose to any man who cultivated his body. She could learn learning techniques easily and had almost no weaknesses or blind spots. Therefore, if she wanted to win this battle, she had to work on Zhu Sheng and strengthen her Tao will. Only then could she create obstacles for Bao. Even so, Yin Ro wasn't confident. Bao-er's bloodline didn't seem to be fully awakened. Her potential was limitless. Even if Zhu Sheng had the longevity staff of longevity in her hand, this battle was still uncertain. At this moment, in the sky above the training hall, the two of them clashed intensely. The thousands of disciples of the 100 Spirits lineage cheered, and the battle reached a boiling point. With the longevity staff in her hand, Zhu Sheng's Tao will of life was greatly strengthened. The more she fought, the fiercer she became. Bao also felt a faint pressure and even showed signs of being at a disadvantage. Chapter 1845. Numerous sharp bamboos flew out in a row. Huge bamboo shoots that were as hard as rocks crashed down heavily. Those flying bamboo leaves were even sharper than divine weapons. The space in the sky was completely filled by the bamboo sage's Tao will law, and its power was unleashed to the extreme. Bao was in an impenetrable attack, and the waves of attacks pressed down on her. The demonic flames on her body were suppressed, and the flames grew weaker and weaker, as if they were about to be annihilated. Senior sister, you were too stressed last night and did not sleep well. Or did you not eat enough this morning? We've only been fighting for a while, and I haven't even used my full strength yet, and you can't take it anymore? Zhu Sheng smiled proudly. The will of life flowed from her hands, and the will in her body surged. It was as if she could see the end of victory. Then you can use your full strength. If your attacks are only at this level, your ending will be very embarrassing. Bao resisted the attacks and replied, shameless boasting. Zhu Sheng's expression turned colder as she shouted. The staff of longevity burst with dazzling light, and the will of the emperor spread forward, turning into endless bamboo shoots that smashed down. The void buzzed loudly, as if thousands of celestial stones were falling, covering everything. At this moment, Bao-er's eyes became demonic. Traces of flame patterns appeared above her eyes as she stared at the attacks that filled the sky. Zhu Sheng's will of the way seemed to have trapped her tightly, but in reality, it was not without gaps. At this moment, an incomparably sacred light burst out, and a gorgeous crown appeared on Bao-er's head. Her demonic eyes looked through the layers of attacks and fell on Zhu Sheng. They stared at each other, and in an instant, a raging spiritual will of the emperor descended. Zhu Sheng's body trembled, and a divine court appeared in front of her. Above the divine court stood a figure filled with the light of the great path. She was like a majestic and inviolable goddess looking down at Zhu Sheng, making her feel inferior. A strong desire to worship arose in her heart, and her spirit was suppressed. In the outside world, Zhu Sheng took advantage of the short moment of spiritual suppression and could not control her will. Bao-er's 10,000 spirit fire eyes easily saw through the flaws in her attacks. Her body shuttled forward, passing through the dense obstacles. The demonic flames on her palm rolled, and she used the flower plucking hand again. A flaming claw shot out, bringing with it the sound of the air breaking. It was extremely fierce. Han-er's will of the emperor. Witnessing this scene, Yin Ro's soul in the Hundred Spirits Palace trembled slightly. A wave of sadness swept over her, and two streams of tears slowly fell from the corners of her eyes. Danger! Many disciples outside the arena were shocked. Yin Bao was able to counter Zhu Sheng, who was wielding the Staff of Longevity, in the face of such concentrated attacks. She had seized the opportunity to land a heavy blow. Her talent was simply terrifying. Was she preparing to win in one move? At this moment, Zhu Sheng's mind was being suppressed by Bao and the will on her body began to weaken. It was as if she had lost her soul, and she stood there in a daze, leaving her wide open. Even the will of the emperor that she had released earlier had lost control and become extremely chaotic. She was no longer able to stop Bao. The crowd saw Bao and Zhu Sheng closing in on each other. Her flaming claw was about to land on Zhu Sheng's chest. Wong. At this moment, something unexpected happened. A beam of light of the Great Path suddenly exploded from where Zhu Sheng was. A terrifying spiritual wave was born from the light, breaking through Bao's suppression and breaking free from the illusion of the divine court. As her consciousness recovered, the majestic will of the way of life was waved from the Staff of Longevity, and the chaotic rules were restored to order. She did not give Bao a chance. With a thought, bamboo shoots fell from the sky. The spinning bamboo leaves turned into a terrifying storm that swallowed up her opponent. Immediately, the rock-like bamboo shoots and the sharp bamboo were all sucked into the storm. The light and fire of the red Lotus 100-flower hands were also annihilated. At this moment, the arena was silent. The disciples heard the roar and saw Bao's entire body trapped in Zhu Sheng's will of the way. Everyone's hearts sank. Was this the end? However, the outcome was different from what they had imagined. Although many elders and disciples thought that it would be difficult for Bao to win, they had never thought that she would lose. If Zhu Sheng had not broken free from the spiritual suppression, the outcome would have been completely different. What was that ball of light that had broken through Bao's spiritual suppression? Why did the might of the way that permeated the light give everyone a sense of familiarity? Boom, boom, boom. The deafening sound gradually stopped. Bao, who had completely endured Zhu Sheng's will of the way of life, appeared in front of everyone in the next moment. The flames on her body had dissipated, and she was in a sorry state. Her clothes were torn in many places, and there were many bruises on her body. There were also small wounds caused by the bamboo leaves. However, her aura did not weaken. She crossed her arms over her face and stood steadily in front of Zhu Sheng. She's fine. Zhu Sheng's beautiful eyes widened. Her expression was extremely shocked, and her facial features slowly squeezed together. Senior sister's physical strength was too ridiculous, wasn't it? Soul suppressing orb. Bao slowly lowered her arms that were covering her face. She stared at the orb floating in front of Zhu Sheng. Zhu Sheng was shocked, and so was she. This orb was as clear as water and contained an extremely majestic will of the way of life. It was the natal orb formed by the Crimson Pearl disciples of the Fifth Island. Among the 9 veins of the phoenix flower, the Fifth Island specialized in spiritual suppression. Every disciple who entered the Fifth Island was proficient in this way. Moreover, the island master and the elders taught them all the emperor techniques related to spiritual suppression. Bao never expected Zhu Sheng to have a soul-suppressing orb. Of course, Zhu Sheng could not have learned the emperor techniques of the Fifth Island, and the soul-suppressing orb was not hers. Otherwise, she could have activated the orb just now and caused even more severe injuries to Bao. All of this must be her mother's doing behind the scenes. Bao glanced at the main hall. In order to let Zhu Sheng win, not only did she give her the longevity staff, she even went to the Fifth Island to borrow a soul-suppressing orb. Was she doing this to prevent Zhu Sheng from suffering from her spiritual suppression? Mother had gone through a lot of trouble. It's the Crimson Pearl Island's soul-suppressing orb. The elders and disciples outside the arena were also shocked. They all had an incredulous expression. No wonder Zhu Sheng had exploded with powerful spiritual fluctuations. It was the soul-suppressing orb that destroyed Bao Er's emperor intent. It was not Zhu Sheng herself. At this moment, Li Lufeng looked at the first elder with a hint of anger. Previously, his master had said that the island master had set a rule that did not allow Bao to use the other 8 veins of emperor techniques. However, in the blink of an eye, he had lent Zhu Sheng the soul-suppressing orb of the 5th island. He went back on his words and revealed it at the most critical moment. Not only did she injure Bao but Bao would have been defeated by Zhu Sheng if not for her powerful emperor body. It was unfair. It was simply infuriating. Where did senior sister learn the body refinement technique? Junior sister is so envious. However, this is not a big problem. You have been hit by several of my laws. Do you still have the ability to fight? Zhu Sheng looked at Bao and smiled. Admit defeat. It's more dignified. Bao was already injured, and Zhu Sheng's laws and Dao intent remained in her body. Zhu Sheng held the longevity staff in her hand and had the soul-suppressing orb to protect her emperor's soul. She was in an invincible position. Yin Bao had exhausted all her techniques. It was meaningless to continue fighting. I have never cultivated any body refinement technique. You can be envious because I was born like this. As for admitting defeat, Bao's voice changed. Her pure and bright eyes suddenly became deep like an endless abyss. It gave people a sense of suffocation. Boom! A layer of flames burst out from her body and soared up. The blood-red flames broke through the 9 heavens and illuminated the 100-spirit Dao peak. Bao's brows were filled with anger. The bloodline power in her body roared. An even stronger power burst out. The flames that enveloped her body gradually turned from red to black. What followed was an even more terrifying emperor aura and suffocating pressure. The flames were as red as ink. This is... Yin Ro's eyes widened. Bao's Dao flame had transformed for the second time. It seemed to have mutated. The power that burst out made her heart palpitate. Could it be? Her innate bloodline had awakened. The reason why a powerful family's descendants were stronger than ordinary martial artists was because their ancestors had an unparalleled almighty. Those almighty's methods were extraordinary. They could imprint their own Dao intent and the laws they were good at into their bloodline, or even their bones. From then on, it would be passed down from generation to generation, allowing the family to continue their power. When the next generation was born, they would have an innate advantage. Bao was in such a situation. Dindi and Xiaohan's bloodline flowed in her body. She might not have inherited every ability, but most of the talents were imprinted in her bloodline. Under special circumstances, it was very likely that they would be awakened. Yin Ro felt that the intensity of Bao's Dao flame had far surpassed before. This was not in her plan. She had temporarily broken the restraints she had set for Bao. In fact, Yin Ro's guess was right. The flames on Bao's body gradually turned from red to black. It was indeed a kind of talent. Qin Hao's burning law. Through the burning law, it allowed the red lotus to sublimate a second time. Its power and Dao intent were greatly enhanced. Even Bao's temperament became more demonic, giving people a deep sense of oppression. What's going on? Zhu Sheng held the longevity staff in her hand. A powerful life, Dao intent, gathered in her body. Even so, she panicked when she saw Yun Bao's current state. Her senior sister's aura was rising. As the black flames lingered, her aura continued to increase. It was getting more and more terrifying. Zhu Sheng suddenly had the illusion that she was facing a Dao emperor. Junior sister, mother is too good to you. I'm very jealous. Bao's pitch-black eyes were as deep as the abyss. Her voice was so cold that it made Zhu Sheng have an impulse to run away. Unfortunately, there was no chance to escape. Bao slowly stretched out her hand. Endless light fell from the sky and bathed her body. Black flames bathed the holy petals. She looked like a demon, but also like a celestial being. The extreme scene was shocking to the eyes. Buzz! There was a terrifying vibration in the air. The flower fairy art was activated. The 100-spirit flower-picking hand broke through the air. There was nothing fancy about it. With the support of the burning law, The Red Lotus Overlord Fire merged with the 100 Spirit Sect's strongest martial technique. The Tao intent that Bao burst forth was beyond everyone's imagination. Master, save me. Zhu Sheng's face was as pale as paper. She let out a cry in a different tone. Her body trembled violently, and she could not move at all. She was imprisoned by Bao Er's Emperor intent. The pressure on her body was no different from a Tao Emperor. She was a 6th-stage Tao Emperor. Even with the help of the longevity staff, it was impossible for her to win against the Tao Emperor. There were 4 Tao Emperor rings between them. She even lost the ability to escape in front of a Tao Emperor. As for the soul-suppressing pearl, it was a borrowed broken pearl. It was useless. Now that Bao wanted to defeat Zhu Sheng, she did not want to use spiritual attacks. Chapter 1846. The black flame was as black as ink, like a great furnace that could refine everything. The remaining rules on Bao Er's body were all refined in it. Bao Er's palm struck forward without any fancy moves. The flower-plucking hand whistled through the air. The power of the Tao was so shocking that even the great elder, who was hosting the competition, changed his expression. Tears of panic appeared in Zhu Sheng's eyes. It was as if she was suppressed by a sovereign master and could not move. She had no choice but to call for help. The atmosphere was extremely suffocating. However, no one stopped her. Yin Ro and the other elders did not intervene. When the Tao of Emperor came, the flower-plucking hand's violent energy hit her face. Zhu Sheng closed her eyes tightly. Her neck shrunk subconsciously, and her body and spirit were tense. Buzz, the Tao power of this palm, finally dissipated. Bao dispersed Dilly. There was no need for them to continue fighting because the outcome was already decided. She was scared to tears. Junior sister's tear-stained face was really pitiful. A gentle palm patted Zhu Sheng's little head. For some reason, Bao stood in front of her and smiled at Zhu Sheng. Zhu Sheng's tense spirit relaxed. The power that crushed her spirit disappeared. She suddenly reached out and grabbed Bao Er's chest. However, this palm did not carry any Dilly. Even so, Bao would not give her any chance to touch her. The jade hand on Zhu Sheng's head gently pressed down. A body fell like a meteor. With a buzz, it smashed into the ground of the training hall and shook up a layer of smoke. Ouch, it hurts. Zhu Sheng fell and squatted. She got up and patted her butt. She looked up at Bao angrily. She looked very unconvinced and said, "Your power is one level higher than mine. It's unfair." Bao shook her head and said, "Okay, you have to stand at attention. You have to admit that you lost. I only used half of my strength. I took care of you very well." Zhu Sheng pouted and looked like she was about to cry. "You don't have to humiliate me like this. Half of your strength is comparable to a sovereign master. Who are you trying to scare? Believe it or not." Bao looked at the great elder. "Don't just stand there. Get to work." The first seat of the 100 Spirits clan, Yin Bao The great elder announced the result of the competition. "Ha! Senior sister, you are too powerful. You gave us all a fright just now. We thought we were going to capsize." Senior sister Zhu Sheng is also very powerful. With 2 the archweapons in hand, he had to give senior sister Zhu Sheng some face. Many mischievous junior sisters rushed into the training hall and surrounded Bao and Zhu Sheng, chattering nonstop. Bao was indeed worthy of being the island master's beloved daughter. Her position as the chief disciple was extremely stable. Li Lifeng also went up to congratulate him. The power that Bao had displayed was extremely shocking. Just now, Bao's aura was almost on par with a Tao, proving Monarch. This battle had given Li Lifeng great confidence. Perhaps the 100 Spirits lineage could really snatch the Dream Branch from Ba Dao. The elders looked at the atmosphere in the training ground and revealed gratified smiles. The outcome of the battle between Bao and Zhu Sheng was within their expectations. But the course of the battle was beyond everyone's expectations. The island master had bestowed upon Zhu Sheng 2 magic tools to protect her. Even so, she had still been defeated. Bao Er's talent was far too terrifying. Perhaps this year's Meng Ji really might descend upon 100 Spirits Island. But it was only a possibility. Phoenix Flower, the leader of the 9 lineages, and Bailon, the second-ranked island, were all above Zhu Sheng in terms of strength. Bao Er's chances of snatching the Dream Branch were slim. Even if there was only a 1% chance, with Bao Er around, the 100 Spirits lineage would have the qualifications to compete. 20 years had passed, and the child had grown up. Bao Er was 32 years old this year, and would be considered an old lady in an ordinary family. However, in the cultivation world, especially in front of the Tao of Emperors, a mere 20 years was like the blink of an eye. If that woman was still alive and had witnessed Bao Er's growth, she would be so happy. The figures in the training hall gradually dispersed. Today's battle had shocked the elders and disciples of the 100 Spirits lineage. Although there were some twists and turns, it did not affect Bao Er's victory. "Mother." As the elders and disciples dispersed, Bao Er shouted towards the majestic hall above. Her eager eyes scanned carefully as if she wanted to catch the figure she had been hoping for. But in the end, she did not see Yunro. Bao Er's fingers gradually tightened. The training hall was empty, and she was the only one left. She stood there and waited for a long time, but she did not receive a response from Yunro. With disappointment in her heart, she lowered her head and left. Although she had won the battle, she was not happy. This feeling was too unbearable. "Little girl, Mother also hopes that you can live a stable and happy life, but your birth is destined to be unstable. Don't blame Mother for being heartless. I only hope that one day, when even I can't protect you, our little princess of the 100 Spirits lineage will be able to take charge and protect herself. Am I right?" "Little Han." Yunro silently muttered a name. She stood in a corner of the hall where Bao Er could not see and silently watched her back. Her heart ached, but she had to endure it. This was also cruel to her. She did not want the tragedy from 20 years ago to repeat itself on Bao Er. Hence, Bao Er had to be strong enough. She had to be stronger than Dinda back then. 1 month later, in the north border of the East Continent, an incomparably grand event swept through the north border and spread to the entire East Continent until the news reached every Overlord's faction. The 9 branches of the Phoenix Flower sect, the 9 Islands Martial Arts Symposium, established a goddess who would inherit the 9 branches' supreme Arch artifact, the Dream Branch. After the news spread, the north border was in an uproar, and the 5 territories were shocked. The Phoenix Flower sect was very influential. Their disciples were all over the 3,000 small worlds. Even among the overlords of the East Continent, many of them were from the Phoenix Flower sect. Now, the 9 branches of the Phoenix Flower sect had established a goddess who would inherit the Dream Branch. This was equivalent to announcing that the goddess that was about to be born in the East Continent would become the future leader of the Phoenix Flower sect. With the Phoenix Flower goddess's command, the 9 islands had to obey. With the 9 islands' immense power, not just in the North Domain, even in the entire Divine Wilderness, the Phoenix Flower Goddess would become an extremely influential figure. No one would dare to underestimate her, including the Sunset Battle God and Great Qin's Empress Ling Xian. On this day, the 9 branches Martial Arts Symposium began. The location was set to be the first of the 9 islands, the Phoenix Flower Mountain. The Phoenix Flower Tao Peak was the supreme ancestral ground of the 9 branches. The island master of each branch had walked out from this place, and then established a new orthodoxy to take in disciples. For thousands of years, most of the northern territory was governed by the 9 branches, and they were extremely powerful. Now, the 9 branches had established a goddess to inherit the Dream Branch. The overlords of the 5 territories naturally had to send people to observe the ceremony to show their respect. At this moment, the Phoenix Flower Mountain was filled with people. The atmosphere of the mountain was very lively. No matter which branch the Phoenix Flower sect was, they were all women. Usually, men were not allowed to go up the mountain. Therefore, many overlords came to take advantage of this grand event. Even if the scenery was not good, the 9 branches fairies were gathered here. It was a beautiful scene that could not be missed, especially when the 3rd Island Lord, Yunro would come personally. Yunro's name was very famous in the East Continent. In terms of prestige and cultivation, she was not as good as the Empress of the East Continent, Han Lingxian. However, in terms of temperament and beauty, the lords of the Five Territories had to admit that they would fall in love with her. No one could remain unmoved when they saw Yunro. It was a pity that they could only look at her from afar. They were not fated to be with her. From then on, they hoped to meet her in their dreams. It was not an exaggeration to say that Yunro was the dream lover of the lords of the Five Territories. On the Phoenix Flower Mountain, a group of goddesses with outstanding temperaments descended from the sky and landed on the mountain. Although there were beautiful goddesses everywhere on the mountain, and it was too much for the eyes to take in, this group of women still immediately became the center of attention when they landed. Everyone's gazes landed on the extremely tall and mature woman. "They're here." A white-haired old woman with a red glow on her face walked towards the group of fairies with a walking stick. This person was the great elder of the Phoenix Flower sect. Her cultivation was the great emperor of true self. She was very senior and was the most respected elder of the 9 branches. "Greetings, Grand Uncle Master." Yunro bowed. Although she was the island lord of the 3rd territory and their cultivations were the same, she was still very respectful to the old woman. "The girl is becoming more and more beautiful and dignified. Aya, come and take a look at our little Princess Bao." After the great elder praised Yunro, she immediately noticed Yun Bao behind her. She immediately smiled and raised her walking stick and opened her arms. She looked very benevolent, like a grandmother of an ordinary family. "Grandmaster Grandma," Bao greets Grandma. Bao knelt in front of the old woman. In the 100 Spirits sect, Zhu Sheng, Li Lufeng, and many other elders also knelt. Dispense with the formalities, dispense with the formalities. "Bao, let Grandma take a look." The great elder stretched out her wrinkled hand. Her palm with black spots and calluses caressed Bao's soft cheeks. That slightly rough feeling was very special. It was very intimate and warm. "You're so tall. You're almost as tall as your mother, Yunro." "Bao, Grandma thinks very highly of you. You have to work hard." The old woman's lowered eyelids were filled with love. She looked at Bao, and even felt a wave of heartache. This child's fate was too rough. "Grandma, you only have seen your sister in your eyes. You might not even remember Zhu Sheng." Zhu Sheng stood at the side and said jealously, "Oh, Yunro's little disciple, right? What's her name again?" The great elder seemed to be a little hard of hearing. Her head moved slightly closer to a middle-aged woman beside her. "Zhu Sheng." The middle-aged woman blushed with shame. "Oh, Zhu Sheng, Zhu Sheng." The great elder repeated her name twice. "Grandmaster Grandma, this is my disciple Lufeng." The 100 Spirits sect's first elder pulled Li Lufeng and pushed him forward. "Hurry up and say something to Grandma." Grandma Fenghua was the disciple of the first-generation ancestor of the Phoenix sect. In terms of seniority, she was 1 generation higher than the current Phoenix sect's island lord. It was rare for the people of the 9 branches to see her, let alone say a few words to her. "Hello, Grandma." Li Lufeng smiled and said. His simple words made the 100 Spirits sect's first elder roll her eyes. Couldn't he say something else? He only had a chance to say 1 sentence. However, Grandma Fenghua ignored this sentence. She pulled Bao's hand again. "Let's go. Sit with your mother next to Grandma. Grandma still has a set of emperor techniques to teach you." Ahem. Grandmaster Grandma, junior sister Bao, has a martial arts competition today. She can't sit with you. The middle-aged woman was the first disciple of the current Phoenix sect's island lord. She was from the same generation as Yunro. Grandma Fenghua looked disappointed. She reluctantly let go of Bao's hand and glared at the middle-aged woman. Then she said to Yunro, "Let's sit. The other children are here." She added that Bao could go to her palace to eat immortal peaches after the competition. Then she walked toward the chairman with Yunro. "Ah, Grandma Fenghua, I'm jealous of Bao." The middle-aged woman shook her head with a smile. "Senior sister, are you going to participate in the martial art competition?" Bao asked. Her words tugged at the hearts of all the members of the Hundred Spirits lineage. They all knew that her opponent's cultivation was at the pinnacle of the doctrine-proving realm, and she was only a step away from the great emperor of true self. If Chief Phoenix Flower were to participate in the battle, then there would be no need for the competition to continue. Bauer, are you scared? The middle-aged woman smiled. Of course, she was scared. Bauer pretended to shiver, which made Phoenix Sec's first disciple laugh. Don't worry. If senior sister and senior sister don't participate, your second senior sister and third senior sister will participate in my place. I have no fate with Mingji. Then the middle-aged woman turned around and walked toward the chairman. She was younger than Yunro. Even though she was a disciple of the Phoenix Sec's Island Lord and was of the same generation as Bauer, how could she participate in the competition? That would be unfair. Phew! Bauer, Zhu Sheng, and Li Lifeng all let out a sigh of relief. They watched Phoenix Sec's first disciple walk away. Only then did they feel the pressure in their hearts disappear. Chapter 1847. It was good news that first seat Fenghua wasn't going to participate in the martial arts competition, but even the second and third seats were extremely powerful. Bauer and the others didn't dare to let their guard down. On the vast Dao field, Ancestor Grandma Feng Hua sat at the front, with dark blue, Bailing, Fuya, and Crimson Pearl Island Masters on her left and right. This luxurious lineup was the peak battle strength of the 9 veins of Feng Hua, representing the supreme prestige of the #1 overlord of the North Territory. Countless overlords sat on the east and west sides of the dojo. Today, many lords of the 5 realms of the East Continent came to watch the competition and witness the birth of the goddess. In the east side, the second overlord of the North region, Ancient Ape Island, had Emperor Ape, Emperor Azure Wolf, Emperor White Tiger, Emperor Peacock, and others. In addition, the Shuo clan of the East Sea, Sword Master Hyun Ing of Juing Sword Palace, Holy Light Emperor of the Judgment Hall, and White Lunar Pavilion Master were also there. On the west side of the dojo, Prince Chun of the Kim people of the Warring States Kingdom sat at the front with dignity. Behind him were Sect Master Tatian of the West region, Overlord Moro, Sacred Sword Wind people of the South region, Divine Monk of the Vajra Institute, and many other overlords. The overlords present today were all influential figures of the East Continent. They supported the 9 lineages of Fenghua. A few decades ago, the peak of Fenghua was the place with the most overlords except for the Valley of the God Burial. It was extremely grand. Moro, what do you think of this martial arts competition? Sect Master Tatian asked with a smile. After the Valley of the God Burial, he and Moro had become close friends and often visited each other in the past 20 years. The only regret in his heart was that the buried God Temple had been annihilated by Zhang Lu, and the treasures had also been destroyed. He had searched the vast sinkhole for several days, but he hadn't found even half a divine object's remains. It was really too painful. Rumor has it that First Seat Fenghua has reached the pinnacle, and her cultivation is comparable to that of Prince Chun and Palace Lord Yin. If she participates, the Dream Branch will belong to her. Overlord Moro replied with a smile. Don't compare me to a dead person. First Seat Fenghua won't participate. Otherwise, the 9 lineages martial arts competition is meaningless. Prince Chin said with a solemn expression. Palace Lord Yin had been dead for 20 years. Grass had already grown on his grave. As he spoke, Jin Chen's gaze swept over the disciples of the 9 bloodlines. When he saw Yun Bao, a hint of grief flashed through his eyes. Similar. At first glance, she didn't look like a girl, but the more you looked at her, the more she resembled Qin Hao. It had been 20 years. Every time he recalled the scene in God Burial Valley, Jin Chen's heart would churn with pain. Back then, he didn't know that Li Chuji was Denda's reincarnation. Although Denda's reputation was far greater than his, they were still friends. Jin Chen didn't recognize people as brothers. Once he recognized them, he would treat them with sincerity. Regretful, too regretful. If he hadn't been restrained by Meng Xiang at that time, he definitely wouldn't have let Qin Hao die in the hands of Battle Tower. Now, this girl was left alone. It made his heart ache. Jin Shun could almost conclude that Yun Bao was the daughter of his brother Dendi. However, in these 20 years, he didn't come to disturb Bao Er's life. It wasn't that he didn't want to, but he was afraid that he would arouse the suspicion of War God Temple and cause Bao Er to fall into a disaster. Putting aside first seat Fenghua, who does Prince Chun think has the most strength and qualifications to obtain the dream branch among the 9 bloodlines? Moro noticed Jin Chen's gaze and secretly glanced at Bao Er. Although he didn't show it, his heart was surging with waves. That person should be the daughter of his honor. If nothing happened to his honor, she would definitely be the most dazzling princess in the East Continent. But now, she was participating in the 9 lineages competition as a disciple of Fenghua. It had been 20 years. I wonder how his honor is doing now. Based on my observation, the first seat of the 100 Spirit sect is the most capable and qualified to inherit the sacred object of Phoenix Flower and become the goddess of the 9 lineages. Jin Chen said bluntly. As Denda's daughter, he naturally believed in Bao Er's ability. The first seat of the 100 Spirit sect? Many monarch lords looked over. 20 years ago, Denda died in God Burial Valley for the 2nd time. He died under the might of Battle Tower's commander. It is rumored that his first wife is a cultivator of the 3rd bloodline of Phoenix Flower Island. She is the sister of Island Master Yunro. I see that woman's facial features are similar to Denda's wife. Could she be Qin Hao's daughter? At this time, an ear-piercing voice came from behind, causing the hearts of all the monarch lords to tremble. Dendi, God Burial Valley. These words were unforgettable for the experts of the 5 realms. It was taboo for almost everyone. No one dared to mention it in private. Everyone looked back and saw Wind People Feng Gaishi looking at them with a smile. His narrow eyes landed on Jin Shun. Jin Shun had once called Li Chuji his brother. If she was really Denda's daughter, Prince Shun would definitely be biased. Even if she wasn't Li Chuji's daughter, he couldn't get away with it. Feng Gaishi, watch your mouth. Be careful. Disaster comes from the mouth. Jin Shun said in a deep voice. His tone was extremely sharp. I just said it casually. Prince Chun, are you threatening me or are you nervous? Feng Gaishi smiled. After 20 years, his cultivation was still at the 8th tier of the Dao realm. However, even if he and Feng Junfei were crippled, it didn't stop the Wind People from growing stronger. After God Burial Valley, the Battle Tower led their troops to the south. Empress Shui Yao led her disciples to hide under the protection of the Dao ancestor and lost their vast territory. Now, the Qilin Mountain was sealed by a formation for 20 years. The disciples didn't dare to go out. After all, the Dao Mountain and the War God Hall had become enemies. The bald donkeys of the Vajra Institute in the south were obsessed with Buddhism and didn't care about worldly affairs. This gave the Wind People a rare opportunity to expand. Now, more than 60% of the vast south was under the control of the Wind People. They obtained both resources and talents, and their family reached an unprecedented prosperity. Feng Gaishi was naturally very happy. It didn't matter if his body was crippled. His Dao heart was damaged, and his cultivation didn't increase. Anyway, he was already like this. In the future, the family would be supported by his brothers. He just needed to enjoy his life. Nervous? What am I nervous about? Come, tell me what I'm nervous about. Try saying it if you dare. Tongue. Jin Shin stood up. Traces of light of the true will of the great path flowed on his tall body. Although he did not release the will of the way of the emperor, the atmosphere in the training hall suddenly became extremely oppressive. Faint rumbling sounds came from the void. Feng Gaishi's face froze. His smile immediately disappeared. Murderous intent. Jin Shin's divine soul was locked on his divine soul. His aura was filled with intense, murderous intent. This made Feng Gaishi shut his mouth. Although he stared coldly at Jin Shun, he didn't dare to say anything. Eunuch, useless. Jin Shin sneered and slowly sat back down. He didn't want to talk to this bastard anymore. Feng Gaishi clenched his fists as his face trembled. For 20 years, no one in the southern world dared to say that his body was crippled. In order to prove himself to the world, he He would take in dozens of concubines every year. He danced and sang as if he was a celestial being. He was as happy as an immortal. But today, Jin Shen's sarcasm pierced deep into his heart, making him feel extremely humiliated. He was so angry that he almost exploded. Gaishi, don't argue with a mad dog. He bit you. Are you going to bite him back? Feng Junfei secretly sent a message to Feng Gaishi, asking him to stay calm. Feng Junfei looked terrible. He was a Dao-proving monarch, but people felt that he wasn't even as strong as an 8th-level Dao-proving realm cultivator. Many people knew that Feng Junfei was severely injured. Rumor had it that the wind people who escaped from Western Liang were almost dead. Luckily, the ancestral patriarch of the wind people saved his life. But because of that, his emperor will was damaged and his power was far weaker than before. This father and son were actually quite miserable, but no one dared to expose the wind people. As long as the ancestral patriarch of the wind people didn't fall, the wind people in the south wouldn't collapse. No one wanted to be enemies with an overlord force. Except for Jin Shen. Jin Shen was a true self-great emperor, so Feng Gaishi couldn't do anything about it. He could only endure the humiliation silently. At the moment, the main seats and the guest seats on both sides of the dojo were very lively. All the monarchs and lords were discussing which branch would win the Dream Branch. Among them, the Phoenix Flower Branch was still the most favored. Even though the first seat might not participate, the second seat was still the top among the 9 branches. Apart from the Phoenix Flower Branch, the second island, Bailan, also attracted the attention of many monarchs. Bailan and the most mysterious 8th island, Jinlu, were the rivals of the Phoenix Flower Branch. They had the highest chance of winning the Dream Branch. On the other hand, Yun Bao of the 100 Spirits Branch, who was favored by Jin Shen, was much weaker than the others. Her chances of becoming the goddess were very low. Everyone, Ancestor Feng Hua stood up. Now that all the overlords of the Eastern continent had arrived, it was time to start the sparring session. She stood at the top of the training grounds. Although she was old and weak, her eyes could barely open. She was like a lamp that was about to run out of oil. However, her old body emitted an extremely thick emperor's might. The moment her chi was released, the entire Dao peak fell silent. In the past, Master created the Phoenix Flower Sect and established the orthodoxy for the Northern Territory. Countless generations of outstanding heroes have been created. Many of the wives of the sovereign lords present are also disciples of the Phoenix Sect. Now, thousands of years later, the Phoenix Flower Sect has produced 9 branches: Dark Blue, 100 Spirit, Whisper Tooth, and so on. The island lords of the 9 branches have brought their disciples here and established the goddesses. They have also determined the ownership of the Dream Branch, the sacred item of our sect. Ancestor Feng Hua bowed slightly. Senior, you're too polite. Speaking of which, we are all juniors of the Phoenix Flower Branch. Not only juniors, but in terms of status, I should also call you Ancestor Feng Hua. Huh? The monarchs and lords laughed. Most of them had a deep relationship with the 9 branches. It was not an exaggeration to say that they were the son-in-law of the Phoenix Flower Branch. It was natural for them to come here to watch. All right, I will accept the title of Ancestor Feng Hua. The auspicious time has arrived. The 9 branches sparring session will officially begin. Ancestor Feng Hua announced solemnly. Disciples of the 9 branches, enter. The chief disciple of the Phoenix Flower Branch stood respectfully in front of Ancestor Feng Hua and gave the order on behalf of the elders. Today, although she did not have the chance to obtain the Dream Branch, she would shoulder the responsibility of hosting the 9 branches sparring session. Suddenly, figures with extraordinary temperaments entered one after another. The chief disciple, the second chief disciple, and the 4th disciple of the Phoenix Flower Branch were the first to arrive. Next were the 3 disciples of Bailan: Bailing, Yin Bao, Zhu Sheng, Li Lufeng, Fuya, Jiang Zhu, Wu Huang, Ming Guang, Jin Lu, and Tao Sheng. There were a total of 30 people from the 9 branches. They all stood neatly, and each of them was so beautiful that it was shocking. Their temperaments were extraordinary, and they exuded powerful monarch chi. They were like a group of fairies who had descended from the 9 heavens. This made the descendants of the 5-domain monarchs envious and yearning. Their fathers were able to form ties with the phoenix flower branch. Now, their descendants naturally had a chance, and the chances were great. Perhaps one of the 30 fairies present would be their future wife. As long as they were willing to work hard and boldly pursue, the chances were great. After all, they came from the top circles of the East Continent. Screech! At this moment, suddenly, a loud cry of a divine bird came from the void. It sounded very far away, but in the next moment, the entire sky above the phoenix flower peak changed. Majestic fire clouds filled the sky, and an incomparably brilliant war chariot rolled out from the fire clouds. On the chariot stood a majestic figure. Chapter 1848. Above the Phoenix Flower Dao mountain, fiery clouds covered the sky. A suffocating Dao might descended. Everyone could not help but look up. Within the fiery clouds, a bright carriage slowly appeared. An unparalleled figure stood on the carriage. 9 golden crow beast thearchs surrounded him. His divine might was unparalleled. The appearance of this person was like the descent of the heavens. War God Temple, Jean Lu. In an instant, the lords of the 5 realms tensed up. They only felt that the figure surrounded by golden crows was so majestic that it was difficult to look up. It seemed that no one had expected Jean Lu to come here in person. The Battle Tower was a simple name, but it had many meanings in the East Continent. The most obvious one was disaster. Wherever the Battle Tower appeared, something shocking must have happened. 600 years ago, he came to the East Sea, and the Mu clan was destroyed. 600 years later, he appeared in the burial god relic, and Dinda died. Now, after 20 years, he appeared for the 3rd time, and he came to the ancestral land of Fenghua. It inevitably made people panic and fear. On the main seat, Yin Rose stared at the figure on the chariot. She suddenly stood up from her seat, and a layer of Emperor's light flickered around her body. Her divine consciousness shrouded Yin Bao. As long as Jean Lu intended to attack, she would protect Bao and leave. The Martial Arts Symposium of the 9 Branches. I didn't expect Commander Lu to come. Your presence brings light to my humble abode. The old voice broke the oppressive atmosphere. Ancestor Grandma Fenghua rose and flew to the front of a chariot. At this moment, her eyelids that were almost drooping suddenly opened and erupted with a boundless radiance. Her old and stooped body seemed to have become boundlessly majestic, even more majestic than the Phoenix Flower Taoist peak. Strands of Emperor light snaked around her body, and her aura became one with the great Tao, like the source of the heavenly Tao, approaching perfection. On the chariot, Jean Lu held the sword of War God. His posture was as straight as a statue. His long black hair swayed, and a scar could be faintly seen below his forehead. This was the injury caused by Tsingang's cudgel. That cudgel directly shattered his helmet. At this moment, Jean Lu looked at Grandmother Fenghua and sensed her aura. She was at the half-step, unblemished realm. He said calmly, "The 9 Pulse Martial Arts Symposium is a major event in the East Continent. The god of war paid special attention to it and ordered me to come here to observe the ceremony. He also prepared a generous gift for Phoenix Flower Goddess." Emperor light flashed in his eyes, and the space in front of the battle tower fluctuated. Then, a gift box appeared in front of Grandmother Zhu. Grandmother Zhu frowned and opened the box gently. In that instant, her heart trembled violently. The water, wind, godly steps, one of the unique skills that made Dinda famous in the past. It is presented in the first volume of the 3 steps as a congratulatory gift, War Tower said with a faint smile. As soon as he said that, the expressions of the 5 realm sovereigns changed. Fleetfoot steps, Remnant Scroll. Although it was only the first 3 steps, none of the martial emperors present dared to underestimate Dinda's absolute art. The Twilight Battle Immortal had gone all out this time. Fenghua is honored. Since that's the case, Commander Lu, please come and sit with me. Grandmother Zhu bowed. Okay. War Tower nodded and stepped down from the chariot toward the main seat in the training ground. At the same time, the 9 golden crow beast emperors pulled the chariot and disappeared into the sky. The sky returned to normal. Yinro, how have you been these years? War Tower deliberately sat beside Yinro and looked at her. Yinro glanced at him and immediately retracted her gaze. Her attitude was extremely cold. After the battle in the God Burial Valley, she had said that War Tower should not come to Fenghua again. The North Territory did not welcome them. Today, the island sovereigns of the 9 sects had gathered here to appoint a goddess and inherit their sect's sacred item. Since War Tower had come as a guest to observe the ceremony, she naturally could not drive them away. Even so, she would not say a word to War Tower. Yinro's nature is like this. Commander Liu, please don't blame her. Grandmother Zhu smiled and withdrew the Emperor Law godly steps. Her heart was filled with doubts. It's okay. Don't mind me. I'm just here to observe the ceremony today. War Tower said. He looked at the training ground and casually glanced at the disciples of the 9 sects participating in the competition. His gaze flashed past Bao Er's position and did not linger on her. Using the 9 sects martial arts symposium, he had the opportunity and excuse to send the godly steps so that Dinda's daughter could touch her father's cultivation technique. However, he could only send the first part. If he sent the entire technique, it would inevitably attract gossip from the outside world and arouse the suspicions of the 9 island sovereigns. Generally speaking, when 2 overlord forces were on good terms, one side could hold a grand event, while the other side could send their sect supreme technique but would not send the entire technique. The relationship between the War God Temple and Fenghua Island was not deep, but it was not bad either. In fact, there was no need to send such a big gift. The godly steps was enough to look down on the East Continent. It was enough to make the 9 island sovereigns uneasy. The most uneasy one was Yinro. She would easily associate Dinda's godly steps with Bao and think that the War God Temple had ulterior motives. War Tower could understand all of this, but since his foster father insisted, he could only comply. Okay. Grandmother Zhu nodded gently. Her old eyes looked at the Taoist field and said solemnly, Today, the disciples of the 9 sects will compete. Those who participate must do their best. Otherwise, it will be blasphemy against the Dream Branch. The competition will be divided into 3 rounds. The 9 sects will have a total of 30 people. Their opponents will be determined by drawing lots. Each person will fight 2 rounds to determine the top 10. After the first 2 rounds, I will decide the rules of the 3rd round. Yes, we will do our best. The geniuses of the 9 sects shouted in unison. Bow, or clenched her fists and looked up at the man beside Grandmother Zhu. In her mind, the cruel scene imprinted in her blood appeared. This man hit her with a palm. From then on, she lost the memory of the woman who took care of her. That was her mother. And to kill Dendi of the East Continent. Bao didn't know how to address Dendi. When she was young, she was born in the Phoenix Flower tribe. Although she knew she had a father, she didn't have many feelings for him. As she grew up, she was no longer an ignorant girl. Even if she didn't have any feelings, she had to recognize reality. Dendi was her father. She was originally a princess of the Daqin Empire. But all of this was reduced to ashes by the palm of the God Burial Valley. The beauty of the world no longer had anything to do with her. She became an orphan, a child that no one cared about. I admit that I can't beat you, but if you dare to attack him, let alone you, all of the Phoenix Flower 9 sects will disappear overnight. Zhu Sheng stretched out her hand and gently tugged at Bao Er. Bao Er's eyes turned red. She had heard rumors about this senior sister. The rumors were true, but she didn't want to see Bao Er die. Who? Bao Er let out a breath and suppressed the surging hatred in her heart. Her junior sister was right. If she attacked the War God Temple, not only would she lose her life, but she would also implicate the Phoenix Flower 9 sects and cause the 9 islands to cease to exist. The War God Temple was very strong. The terrifying scenes of the past were engraved in Bao Er's heart. Many emperors had attacked, but no one could win against this man, including her omnipotent mother. You are the daughter of Master. Remember it well. Zhu Sheng reminded her again. She was also very nervous. One by one, the silhouettes stepped forward. Their palms brushed past a flower tube in the center of the training ground and took out a peach branch. Each branch had a competitor's name engraved on it. Whoever was chosen would be chosen. There was no choice. It all depended on luck. Li Lufeng, Zhu Sheng, and Bao took out their own branches. Looking at the name engraved on it, Li Lufeng's face squeezed together. I'm finished. Lead disciple Fuya. Zhu Sheng saw the name engraved on the branch in Li Lufeng's hand. You are 2 levels away. Be more confident. You should have a chance. Lead disciple Fu Yu was in the 8th level. Li Lufeng's cultivation was the same as Zhu Sheng's at the 6th level. If they fought well, they still had a chance. Hee, I am also the personal disciple of the Island Lord. Li Lufeng had no confidence. He looked at the branch in Zhu Sheng's hand. Your luck is not much better than mine, but I won't admit defeat. Zhu Sheng clenched the branch in her hand. The name of Mingguang's 2nd seat was engraved on it. It was Mingguang of the 7th island. The 2nd seat's cultivation was in the 7th level of the Dao realm. He was 1 level higher than Zhu Sheng. The level of winning was also not optimistic. Then, the two looked at Yin Bao. Their gazes fell on the branch in her hand. They almost cried out in shock. Led disciple by Lan. Zhu Sheng's heart trembled violently. She looked at the competitors and saw a beautiful woman in a blue Taoist robe. The other party was smiling at Yin Bao. The branch contained the secret method of the elders. When the competitors drew lots, they would only pick each other. Therefore, the name in Bai Lan's hand was Bao. Junior sister, what kind of luck do the 3 of us have? You are even worse than us. Li Lufeng smiled helplessly. In this competition, there were 30 people from the 9 branches. Other than Feng Hua, the 2nd seat and lead disciple by Lan were the strongest. They were both in the Dao realm. Bao was in the 7th level of the Dao realm. Her opponent was lead disciple by Lan. It could be said that she had encountered the most troublesome opponent. It's all the same. Bao held the branch and said indifferently. She still looked at the battle tower from time to time. At this moment, all her attention was on War God Temple's Commander Liu. It was as if it didn't matter who her opponent was. You are strong. Zhu Sheng trembled slightly. She didn't take Master Bai Lan's not seriously at all. However, it didn't seem wrong. Anyway, they would meet in the end sooner or later. The first 2 rounds were just an interlude to eliminate the weakest group of people. Phoenix Flower 2nd seat, Taoxing 2nd seat. Junior sisters, please come out. Above the dojo, the first disciple Feng Hua hosted the ceremony on behalf of her grandmother. Then, the 2 fairies walked to the center of the dojo. One of them cried as she walked, "What sin did I commit in my past life to meet 2nd senior sister Feng Hua? I am in the 7th level of the Dao realm. Please be gentle." Okay. Boom. A beam of sword chi flashed, and there was a phoenix cry. In one move, the 2nd seat of the 9th island's Taoxing lost the ability to fight. Very gentle. The woman who attacked smiled and walked back to her original position. Sikong Shu was the 2nd disciple of the 1st island, Phoenix Flower Island. She was also the junior sister of the middle-aged woman hosting the competition. She was a Dao Realm Emperor. She defeated a 7th-level Dao Realm Emperor in one move without hesitation. To Sikong Shu, she had just casually used it. It was the same when she sparred with other junior sisters on the Dao Peak. At this moment, there were only 2 figures in her eyes. Bai Ling, Yin Bao and Bai Lan's first disciple. These 2 were the strong opponents who were stopping her from getting the Dream Branch. What was interesting was that she would soon have one less strong opponent. Before her, Yin Bao and Bai Lan's first disciple had already fought. She really didn't expect that the first round would have such a fierce battle between 2 strong opponents. Who would win and who would lose in the first round? Even she started to look forward to it. Chapter 1849. Translator. Nioibo, Studio Editor. Nioibo, Studio Homing Strike. In the Grand Dojo, balls of Emperor Light rolled and wreaked havoc. Figures kept falling to the ground in defeat. The competition between the disciples of the 9 lineages progressed very quickly. After all, they were of the same origin. Although the characteristics of each technique were different, they understood each other. Therefore, the competition mainly depended on the individual's cultivation. The higher the Tao proving Dilly's cultivation, the greater the advantage he had. The 30 people in the dojo belonged to the same generation. They could not blame others for not having an advantage in cultivation. As expected, Li Lufeng from the 100 Spirits lineage lost to Foya in the first battle. However, she still had one more chance to showcase herself. She wanted to see how lucky she was in the second round. Zhu Sheng's opponent was the second seed of the 7th Island's Bright Light. He was 1 level higher than her in the Tao Proving Realm. Both of them fought very fiercely. In the end, Zhu Sheng won with injuries. She shocked everyone and attracted the attention of the 9 lineages, island lords, and many emperors. Azure Zhong Liqing, 100 Spirits Yun Bao, the first disciple of the Phoenix Flower lineage, said solemnly. As soon as she said that, the atmosphere in the dojo became more solemn. The 9 lineages, island lords, and emperors all looked at the dojo. Zhong Liqing, the first seat of Azure lineage. She had already proven her Tao and become an imperial master. Yun Bao Island Lord Yun Ro's daughter, was in the 7th stage of Tao Proving Realm. The difference in cultivation between the two was not small. If it was in the past, this would be a battle without any suspense. However, the 9 lineages island lords did not think so. They had seen Yun Bao grow up. She was born in the Phoenix Flower lineage and was proficient in 9 lineages emperor techniques. She was also very talented and was doted on by the 9 island lords, especially Yunro. No one knew Bao better than she did. This girl's ability was not only on the surface. She had even greater potential. Finally, a battle to watch. It's quite fast, one of the island lords said. Junior sister, what do you think will be the result of this battle? The Azure Island Lord smiled and looked at Yunro. Bao was very talented, but her disciple Zhong Liqing had proven her Tao. After a martial artist entered the Tao, the suppression of cultivation would be very obvious. On the contrary, the effect of one's bloodline Tao would be weakened by the Tao. Senior sister, what do you think? Yunro met his gaze calmly and asked him in return. The Lord of Azure Island should know what Bao was capable of. I don't know either. The Lord of Azure Island shook his head and smiled. If they were at the same level, there was no doubt that Zhong Liqing would not be Bao match. But now, it was hard to predict. Then let's wait and see, Yunro said, feeling a little nervous. Through this battle, she could assess Bao's Emperor Tao battle prowess. In fact, she was also looking forward to it. On the side, the battle tower was as quiet as a wooden statue. His expression was incomparably calm. What was the result? Naturally, his younger sister won. After all, she was Denda's daughter. In his heart, he had already determined the victor between Bao and Zhong Liqing. Junior sister, it's been 10 years since we last met. At this moment in the training ground, Zhong Liqing looked at Yun Bao. She was not in a hurry to make a move. Bao was once the little princess of the 9 lineages. Back then, she also liked this little junior sister of Bai Ling very much. Yes, senior sister Qing, you don't have to take care of me in this battle. Just do your best. Bao nodded. Senior sister Qing was dressed in a blue Taoist robe. She was a gentlewoman. Of course, she was also a powerful water empress. The Azure lineage specialized in water attacks. All right, grandmother is watching from above. Senior sister, you can't hold back even if you want to. Junior sister, be careful. As soon as Zhong Liqing finished speaking, a layer of blue watery light appeared below her. It gathered into 9 emperors' rings that slowly rotated. At the same time, countless flower petals fell from the sky like water droplets. Even the air became moist. It made her look like a goddess who controlled the rain. Bao's body was also bathed in flower light. The flower fairy technique was the foundation of the 9 lineages Emperor Tao. No matter which lineage a disciple used their sex ultimate technique, they had to use the flower fairy technique to unleash it. Go! Zhong Liqing said one word. Suddenly, a turbulent Emperor's light erupted from her body. A terrifying torrent surged from the light and gathered into a huge water dragon. It roared and charged forward, wanting to devour everything. Bao took a light step forward. 7 Emperor's rings bloomed under her feet. Extremely intense light surged and flowed towards her body. She grabbed at the air with her palm. The flower-plucking hand tore through the air. It gathered into a huge handprint midway. It distorted the space and grabbed the dragon's head. With a forceful squeeze, the dragon's head exploded into water. Zhong Liqing smiled. Her slender fingers moved and formed a seal. Emperor's will swept out. The water vapor from the collapsed dragon's head gathered again. It suddenly turned into 3 blue spears. The sharp light pierced through the space and appeared in front of Bao in an instant. It was extremely fast. Break! Bao opened her 5 fingers and clenched them. The 3 spears in front of her suddenly stopped. It was as if they had been imperceptibly imprisoned by her palm. Then, with a boom, they exploded at the same time. The 100-spirit flower-plucking hand is really fierce. Junior sister, senior sister is going to use her true strength. Zhong Liqing's body slowly rose into the air. Her 9 Emperor's rings lit up one after another. The majestic Dilly circled around her, becoming more and more dazzling. Her chi continued to rise. The entire dojo gave off a terrifying rumbling sound. It was like a tsunami was about to erupt. Senior sister's dark blue water manipulation spell is also unpredictable. Junior sister, you have to be very alert. Bao stared at Zhong Liqing seriously. Her opponent was a great Imperial Master cultivator. When her complete Emperor's will erupted, its power could not be underestimated. Tied. Zhong Liqing's jade finger pointed downwards. With a deafening boom, a tsunami suddenly erupted from the ground of the quiet training ground. Endless waves rolled furiously. Bao-er's body soared into the sky, and her entire body was shaken. The terrifying water current stirred, and her body was caught in the turbulence. She spun and flew up into the sky. At that moment, Bao felt as if someone had punched her in the chest. Her legs lost feeling. There was a terrifying whirlpool in front of her. It was as if she had fallen into the depths of the ocean. Under the pressure of Zhong Liqing's will, she could not even breathe. She only felt dizzy. Her chi and blood were flowing in the opposite direction. Her meridians were about to be ruptured by the burst of blood. Fire! Bao shouted. The bloodline power in her body rolled and roared. A layer of blood-red flames was born in the terrifying whirlpool. It was as if a star had exploded. The monstrous flames lit up the entire dojo in an instant. It kept eroding the whirlpool. Soon, the tide was evaporated, and she rushed out of Zhong Liqing's restraint. Suppress. Zhong Liqing was in the air. She pressed her palm down. There was a loud boom. In the sky, a vast ocean formed by Emperor's will fell. It carried the power of heaven and earth and pressed down on the flames. It was as if the ocean was about to swallow Yun Bao. Bao's bloodline Dao flame is still so terrifying. The Lord of Dark Blue Island was shocked. Even if a great Imperial Master's will suppressed her, she could still escape. If her great Imperial Master's will was at the same level, her disciple Zhong Liqing would not be able to fight her. Qing-er's bloodline Emperor's spirit has not appeared, but she has already forced out Bao-er's bloodline Dao flame. Senior sister, why are you making a fuss? Yin Rose said. Bao had released the power of 1 level of talent, but Zhong Liqing had only used 9 levels of will to suppress her. Bao was already unable to raise her head. It was still too difficult to fight a great Imperial Master. If Bao could increase her great Imperial Master's will by 1 level, she might have a higher chance of winning. But looking at the current situation, it would be very difficult to win. Boom! The great Imperial will fell like the suppression of heaven and earth. Bao groaned. Her flaming body fell crazily. She was unable to turn around under the pressure of the waves. The flames of the red lotus began to shrink. She obviously could not win against her opponent in terms of Emperor's will. A 7th-level Great Imperial Master was too weak before a Great Imperial Master. At this time, faint patterns appeared on her chakras. It was as if two flames were burning in her eyes. She felt the power of the ocean falling from above. Her body flashed, and the Tao flame was extinguished. But she was like a small fish swimming in the wild water. She was able to catch Zhong Liqing's path every time. With a whoosh, she broke out of the water. In an instant, the blood-red flames exploded in the void again. Yin Bao, Er's body was like a fire shadow. She opened her fingers and attacked Zhong Liqing's throat with a flower-plucking hand. Difficult. Zhong Liqing's expression was slightly bitter. She flew back. Bao had cultivated on Aquamarine Island before. She knew the Aquamarine sect's water-controlling art like the back of her hand. Even if there was an unbridgeable gap between them, she seemed to be unable to win against her opponent. Zhong Liqing flashed like a phantom. Of course, she knew the destructive power of Bao, Er's emperor's body. Once caught by this girl, even a great imperial master would not be able to escape. The Aquamarine sect mainly cultivated spells. Although the spells were powerful, the emperor's body was the weakest among the 9 sections. Zhong Liqing could not let Yin Bao or get close to her. Senior Martial Sister's reaction is fast. Bao Er's flower-plucking hand fell. A cloud of water vapor exploded in front of her. The cold water droplets splashed on her face. It was Zhong Liqing's water puppet. In just a few seconds from being restrained, to escaping, to almost killing Bai Lan, all of these happened in the blink of an eye. The 5 realms monarchs were all on tenterhooks, secretly praising Bai Lan for her brilliance. Junior Martial Sister Bao my aquamarine water-controlling art is useless against you. Don't blame me for using my power to suppress you. Zhong Liqing said nervously. She flipped her hand and a green vine gourd appeared. The gourd became bigger and bigger until it was even bigger than Zhong Liqing. She carried it on her shoulder. Hongmeng gourd. Yin Bao was surprised. Her senior martial sister was about to use her ultimate move. He Dao intent wins. Zhong Liqing smiled evilly. Her expression suddenly changed. Her majestic emperor's intent merged with her sovereign spirit. The gigantic Hongmeng gourd on her shoulder shone with dazzling light. The sky above the Phoenix Flower sect suddenly changed. It seemed to be isolated from the mortal world. It was sealed in a small world. This small world was filled with Zhong Liqing's emperor's intent. Goodbye, junior martial sister, Zhong Liqing said. Boom! A beam of golden water spurted out of her gourd. It was like an indestructible divine light that pierced through everything in the world. It shot toward Bao. The light radiated and enveloped the entire dojo. The emperors of the 5 realms who were watching from the east and west sides of the dojo changed their expressions at the same time. The divine light spurted out of Zhong Liqing's sovereign spirit's gourd-made sect leader Tatian. Overlord Moro, the clan leader of the Shuo clan, and many other emperors feel threatened. The destructive power of this emperor, might divine light, was astonishing. No wonder she's the first disciple of Aquamarine. She's mid-tier among all the emperors in the 5 realms of the East Continent. If the girl learned the Fleetfoot Step, she would definitely be able to turn the tables. What a pity. Jean Lu sighed slightly. His words seemed to have determined the outcome of the battle. However, Jean Lu looked at Yin Bao seriously. He didn't think so at all. He knew that Zhong Liqing's attack wouldn't be able to defeat Denda's daughter. Even if she hadn't learned the Fleetfoot Step, she would definitely be able to take it. Once Bao took it, Zhong Liqing would end up defeated. Chapter 1850. No matter what realm one reached in cultivation, after releasing their full strength, a martial artist's body, spirit, and Tao intent would always produce an instant of vacuum. During this period of time, they needed to buffer themselves. Even though it was very short, it was a period when a martial artist lacked strength. Therefore, when fighting with others or in a life-and-death battle, unless one's cultivation realm and talent were absolutely superior, one would have the confidence to defeat the opponent in one move. If one did not use one's full strength directly, the outcome would be very dangerous. Zhong Liqing couldn't take down Bao with all her strength. On the contrary, it gave Bao the chance to counterattack and suppress her. Yin Ro coldly sneered in her heart. If Dinda hadn't died in God Burial Valley back then, how could Bauer not know the God movement step? There was no need for the War God Temple to pretend to send over an Emperor-grade cultivation technique, let alone an incomplete one. At present, Yin Ro did not know how Bao would deal with zhong leeching. There was an insurmountable gap between the Imperial Lord and the 7th-tier Dao Vindication. Obviously, she would not be able to win in terms of Imperial will. Perhaps she could stimulate her bloodline Dao flame and let the Dao flame transform a second time. Only then could she compete with zhong leeching, but the consequences would be very dangerous. If she could not win, Bauer would lose. And even if she won, it would have a huge impact on her performance in the second and third rounds. At this moment, boundless Dao might descended from the sky above the dojo. Zhong Liqing unleashed her full strength as a perfect sovereign. The might of her Dao laws was extremely terrifying. Her primordial divine light radiated across the entire dojo. Bao had nowhere to hide and could only face it head-on. As she said, if she couldn't win with her cultivation techniques, she would use her Dao to suppress her. This was the key to her victory and her advantage in this battle. Bao looked up. Grand mist light rapidly descended upon her pupils. At this moment, the chief disciple of Dark Blue gave her an unprecedented pressure. A great sense of crisis rose in her heart. In terms of Dao will, you would not be able to win. Even if the Dao fire had transformed a second time, it was still difficult to win against a Dao-confirming Monarch Lord. It was like gambling. If one lost, one would suffer a crushing defeat. Unless it was absolutely necessary, Bauer would not expose the burning rule. Forget it, let's carry it. Clenching her teeth, Yin Bao put on a fierce look. It didn't matter how she got hurt. Her body was different from others since she was young, and it was very strange. She thought that even if she couldn't withstand senior sister Qing's Monarch spirit rules, and even if her body was pierced through, it would slowly recover afterward. Now, as long as she rushed over and punched her, senior sister Qing would definitely be finished. After all, zhong leeching was also an arrow at the end of its flight. This strike was the weakest moment. Yin Bao went against the flow and pounced towards the Emperor Master's Hongmeng divine radiance. Her crazy actions caused screams to ring out in the training hall. She couldn't avoid it anyway. The descending divine light was getting closer and closer. It was extremely dazzling. Zhong Liqing's Great Path technique had yet to reach Bao but the terrifying will of the Great Path seemed to have already penetrated Bao At this moment, Bao felt that the scene had become very sluggish. In the process of flying, time passed very slowly. The fire of 10,000 spirits flickered in her eyes. She could accurately predict where the divine light would come into contact with her. However, she could not avoid it, nor did she have the intention to, until a piercing pain came from his shoulder, becoming more and more intense, as if the flesh on his shoulder was burning. The scorching pain was unbearable. Bao grimaced in pain, and when he charged toward Zhong Liqing, he even subconsciously grabbed his right shoulder, tearing apart his clothes, revealing a red mark, like a birthmark, and resembling the shape of a maple leaf. The intense, scorching pain came from the maple leaf mark. The temperature became higher and higher, emitting traces of flames. At the same time, a voice sounded in Bao's mind. Body refinement, chi condensation, dragon jade, elemental armor, spirit manipulation, domain. Cultivate to the 9th level of perfection. Forge the supreme divine path, and not enter the cycle of reincarnation, immortal and indestructible. Today, I will guide you to use your own divine path technique. In the future, you will still be able to defeat this person alone. The steady voice gave off a sense of calmness, as if the heavens were collapsing, but the heart of Dao was not shaken. Then, an external force was born from the maple leaf mark, spreading rapidly, filling every meridian in Bao's body and diffusing into every inch of her flesh. This external force was extremely powerful, directly seizing control over her. It used a never-before-seen method to regulate breathing, causing all her meridians to circulate madly. Bao Er's aura became more and more intense under the influence of this external force, becoming uncontrollable. Dilly's cultivation level rose at an unbelievable speed until it was comparable to Zhong Liqing's. What the hell is this? Bao Er was shocked. Her body seemed to be controlled by someone else, and she was completely out of her control. Although her strength and aura were increasing, she felt a wave of panic in her heart. Anyone who suddenly lost their ability to control their Tao and Dilly would be terrified when their Tao, intent, and cultivation level rose inexplicably. However, the voice did not give Bao any explanation at all. The indestructible samsara technique circulated rapidly. The owner of the voice clearly had an extremely deep foundation in this technique, forcefully increasing Bao Er's Tao intense strength and cultivation level in an extremely short period of time, until her mind was filled with countless ancient and profound words. It was a loud bang. With the support of a divine path technique, Bao Er's red lotus Tao intent completely made up for the gap between her and Zhong Liqing. Blood-red flames burst apart, falling madly towards the surroundings of the training ground, but the primordial divine light was firmly blocked by the Tao flames. Even if it was as sharp as a thorn, it was slowly worn down, cracked, and collapsed. Everyone watched as Bao Er, whose entire body was covered in surging blood flames, charged in front of Zhong Liqing's Tao intent bombardment, ferocious like a peerless demon. Then a fist wrapped in Tao flames swung down. Bang! A heavy blow came from the void, and it seemed to have smashed into everyone's hearts. Zhong Liqing's eyes widened in disbelief. She felt her head shake, and her spirit seemed to have been smashed. She fell from the sky and landed heavily on the ground of the training ground. How is this possible? Zhong Liqing's mind was in turmoil, as if her skull had been smashed open by Bao Er. Her eyes rolled up, and her aura weakened. The protective emperor light around her was completely dispersed. Yin Bao actually went against her Tao intent and smashed her down with a punch. How could a 7th-level Tao affirmation cultivator do this? So hot, so hot, so hot. It's burning, it hurts. Yin Bao smashed down Dark Blue's eldest disciple with a punch, and she also landed on the training ground. She hugged her right shoulder and jumped around. Her howls seemed to be even more miserable than Zhong Liqing's, as if she was the victim. The training ground was silent. Zhu Sheng looked at her senior sister, who was jumping around as if she was looking at a monster. She screamed when she saw Bao taking Zhong Liqing's attack head-on. She thought Bao didn't want to live anymore. It was fine if she lost, but it wasn't worth it. Who would have thought that in the next moment, the dignified Imperial Lord Senior Sister Qing would be smashed down? One moment, she was glorious, and the next, she fell to the bottom of the valley. Many elders and island lords of the 9 branches were also frightened. Even Zhong Liqing's master, the Lord of Dark Blue Island, wanted to stop the competition. Yin Ro didn't do anything, but she couldn't just watch Yin Bao act recklessly. Otherwise, her Dark Blue branch would be blamed by the rest of the 8 branches. They would say that she didn't teach Bao well, and Zhong Liqing actually tried to kill Bao in public. But she never thought that the result would be her disciple, Zhong Liqing, being heavily injured. Yin Bao's imperial body was extremely strong, and the disciples of the Dark Blue branch were already weak. Who could withstand that punch? Strange. Ancestor Phoenix Flower squinted her old eyes. Why did Bao's Dilly and Tao flames suddenly become stronger? Yinro also had a puzzled expression. On the side, Zhan Lu's eyes flashed with great shock. At this moment, his heart was beating heavily. Even a flawless great monarch's breathing became heavier. 20 years ago, he had fought with Qin Hao personally. How could he not recognize his opponent's aura? Just now, Bao's Dilly and Tao intent suddenly became stronger and released a wisp of Denda's aura. He couldn't be wrong. But soon, whether it was the aura that Qin Hao left on Bao or the shock in Zhan Lu's eyes, it was very difficult to notice. Junior sister, are you all right? Phoenix Flower Palace Lord hurriedly flew down and landed in the training ground. She wanted to check Bao Er's injuries. I'm fine, I'm fine. Eldest senior sister, please check on senior sister Qing first. Her injuries are worse than mine. Bao Er covered her shoulder and dodged. She was about to cry. She didn't do it on purpose. She didn't have a choice. Cough, cough. I'm fine too. It's nothing serious. I'm just a little dizzy. Zhong Liqing rubbed her forehead and slowly stood up. After all, she was a great monarch expert. Her protective great monarch chi was thick enough. She could feel that Bao Er's fist was controlled very well. It didn't really injure her, but it hit her the right place. As a result, the 100-spirit lineage naturally won this round. Zhong Liqing just felt a little uncomfortable about losing so carelessly. Phew! Phoenix Flower Palace Lord let out a deep breath and relaxed. Fortunately, you're all fine. You were too reckless. Although the 9-pulse martial arts sparring contest required one to use all their strength, they couldn't really go all out. If either Bao Er or Zhong Liqing had an accident, it would be a great loss to the Phoenix Flower Palace. It might cause a conflict between the two lineages and lead to a crisis in the relationship between the 9 lineages. Then this round, Bao Er wanted to say something but stopped. She secretly revealed a gap between her fingers and was surprised to find that the red maple leaf mark on her right shoulder was slowly disappearing. It seemed to have merged into her flesh. She felt strange and couldn't help but sigh in relief. Only then did she move her hand away. I lost. Bao Er, you're really a headache. Zhong Liqing took the initiative to smile and admit defeat. Her expression was very helpless. The Phoenix Flower Palace Lord turned to look at the main seat. As Grandmother Zhu nodded, she announced loudly, 100-spirit lineage, Yun Bao Er wins. Wow, that's too powerful. She subverted my martial arts philosophy. 7th tier, Dao Vindication defeated a Dao Vindication Emperor Lord. Don't disturb me. I seem to have realized something. Outside the arena, countless disciples of the 9 lineages cheered and praised. Bao Er's battle was indeed eye-catching. Although many people felt that it was strange, a victory was a victory. As for how she won, it had nothing to do with others. Zhong Liqing said a few words of congratulations and left the Dao Hall in disappointment. In fact, the chief disciple of the 9 islands was very clear that Bao Er was difficult to deal with. Even if she lost to this brat, it would not be shameful. Even so, she was still at the peak of Dao validation. A dignified emperor, Lord losing to a 7th stage Dao validation cultivator would not only be a blow to her self-esteem, but her master's face would also be very gloomy. Bao Er looked at Zhong Liqing's back and felt a little uncomfortable. Senior apprentice Sister Qing was very nice. Although she also wanted to win this battle, she had to at least win fair and square. Who would have thought that she would win inexplicably? Moreover, the feeling of her body being suddenly controlled made Bao very afraid. She didn't dare to say it out loud. Her mind was in a mess now. The eye-catching mark on her shoulder disappeared, but it didn't dispel her worries. Many ancient characters appeared in her mind out of thin air. They were divided into 9 lines and connected together. It seemed to be a set of cultivation techniques. Yin Bao needed time to think about it, but now she had to cheer up and face the martial arts competition. Chapter 1851. The first round of competition continued. The disciples of the 9 branches were all very talented, but there was no dazzling battle like the one between Bao Er and Zhong Liqing. Few people in the 5 realms could compare to a 7th tier Dao proving realm cultivator defeating a sovereign lord. It could be said that Bao Er had made a name for herself. Jin Shun, Hyuning, and the others were naturally happy for Qin Hao. Although it was a pity that Bao Er didn't inherit Dinda's alchemy skills, she still had her father's name. Her future was promising. The Monarch masters were watching the battle from the east, and the west all gave high praises to Yun Bao Er. These comments made Feng Gaishi very unhappy. Bao Er's talent was already outstanding, not to mention that she seemed to be related to Li Chusan. How could Feng Gaishi feel comfortable after witnessing her defeating a monarch master? Once upon a time, Feng Gaishi was also a proud and outstanding person. He was known as the best swordsman in the East Continent. He was also as dazzling as Bao. The descendants of overlords stood higher than ordinary people for birth. They didn't lack cultivation resources since they were young, and they could easily obtain high-grade emperor arts. They even had a sovereign lord to guide them on the emperor's path. These were conditions that poor people couldn't even dream of. Others had to work hard for decades or centuries to reach the supreme realm, but the descendants of overlords could enter the emperor's path in just a few decades. Yun Bao was born in the Phoenix Flower clan and was nurtured by the sovereign lords of the Nine Islands. It wasn't strange for her to have such achievements among the descendants of overlords. However, for a 7th-tier Dao proving realm cultivator to defeat a sovereign lord, it was extremely amazing. Even Feng Gaishi was jealous. If he had snatched the great emperor's inheritance from Showuk in the Relic Sword City 20 years ago, if he had defeated the alliance of the Dao Sect's Tribulation Sword Emperor in the Battle of the Plains and obtained the treasures of the Divine Palace, if he had not been crippled by Yun Ro and his Dao heart had not been damaged, then he would at least have attained the peak of Dao validation by now. He would not have ended up in such a state. His cultivation base had not advanced, and he might not even be able to defeat Yun Bao. The more Feng Gaishi thought about it, the more hatred he felt for Qin Hao and Showuk. 20 years had passed, and his hatred for them had not lessened. Every time he thought about what had happened in the ruins, he would gnash his teeth in anger. He wished he could go back in time and return to Sword City so that he could swallow those two alive. It seems that I still underestimated him. On the main seat of the Taoist temple, Zhanlo muttered to himself. The sudden increase in Bao's Dao intent was definitely related to Qin Hao. Thinking back to that moment in God Burial Valley, he had executed the reincarnation palm with the honest combat scripture. Although he did not have the intention to kill, in that situation, Qin Hao was still able to find an opening when he was facing a flawless heavenly emperor's extermination suppression. He managed to infuse a strand of emperor's intent into Bao's body. How many people in the world could do this? After all, that palm required one to die first and then be reborn. Zhanlo thought about it and suddenly found it funny. Dinda was Dindy after all. No matter what time it was, a hidden secret would always cause people to feel fear. In fact, it was also true. Even in the face of death, how could he be at ease with his daughter? Even though Yun Ro had personally taken care of her in Phoenix Flower Palace, Dinda still left something for his child to rely on. He must be afraid that one day, Bao would fall into a dangerous situation and be unable to protect herself. Therefore, rather than saying that Bao had defeated Zhong Liqing, it was more accurate to say that Zhong Liqing had fallen into Dinda's trap 20 years ago. The first round of competition quickly ended. Next, the disciples of the 9 branches began the second round of competition. 30 people each had 2 chances to fight. After 2 rounds, the top 10 would be selected to enter the final competition. This meant that no matter who lost, they would lose their final qualification. The second round was still carried out by drawing lots. One figure after another stepped forward and took out a peach branch with a name engraved on it from the kaleidoscope. The opponents they encountered before would not touch each other. Even if they encountered each other again, they would put the peach branch back and grab it again. Li Lifeng's luck was extremely bad. In the second round, he still drew an opponent whose cultivation level was higher than his. After 2 battles, he ended in defeat and completely lost the qualification to compete in the third round. In the second round, Zhu Sheng drew chief disciple Fuya. His cultivation level was not bad, and he was in the 8th layer of path validation. He was also the person who had defeated Li Lifeng in the first round. In the second round, Zhu Sheng and he clashed. The battle between them was rather intense, and it was even bloody. Zhu Sheng had the will of the path of life, and there was a kind of fearless spirit in her bones. She would not submit to anyone. Although chief disciple Fu Yi was 2 levels higher than her and had a certain advantage, after this battle, he had deeply experienced Zhu Sheng's unyielding spirit. She was knocked down again and again, and she climbed up again and again. Even if she was covered in blood, she stubbornly refused to admit defeat. Relying on the will of life, she slowly recovered. Waves of crazy counterattacks made Chief Disciple Fuya feel fear. Finally, both sides were seriously injured and unconscious at the same time. However, because Zhu Sheng fainted slightly later than Chief Disciple Fuya, she finally fought for the qualification to advance. This was an extremely difficult victory. In the first round, she was injured, and in the second round, she was seriously injured and unconscious. Zhu Sheng won both rounds, but everyone knew that she would not be able to fight the third round in her condition. The qualification to advance in her hands was equivalent to being useless. Chief Disciple Zhong Liqing of Dark Blue encountered Chief Disciple Golden Dew of the 8th Island. Among the 9 branches, Chief Disciple Golden Dew was the most mysterious in terms of identity and cultivation level. Apart from the 9 Island Masters and some elders, Bao and the other disciples did not know who she was. But today, Chief Disciple Golden Dew publicly fought. Not only did the disciples of the 9 branches see her true face, but her cultivation level was especially shocking. Her power was not weaker than Zhong Liqing's. She had also reached the peak of path validation. Her battle with Zhong Liqing caused a great commotion in the training hall. In the end, the two of them ended in a draw. Even so, Zhong Liqing lost the chance to fight for the Dream Branch. She was defeated by Bao in the first round, and in the second round, she fought to a draw. As a dignified Imperial Master expert, her battle results were ordinary. The 9 Island Masters and the various Imperial Masters felt that it was a pity. Senior Sister Bao, long time no see. At this moment, in the center of the training ground, 2 figures stood facing each other. The 3rd Island by Lingyan Bao. The 5th Island, Crimson Pearl Wen Ninglan. Wen Ninglan's eyebrows were like jade feathers. Her skin was like a white wall, and she wore a green dress. She gave off a graceful and elegant aura. She was the chief disciple of Crimson Pearl and had reached the 8th stage of path validation. Her talent was outstanding. Among the 9 branches, the Subduing Pearl branch specialized in mind control. They cultivated mind techniques, and their methods were unpredictable. Wen Ninglan was the chief disciple of Crimson Pearl and the eldest disciple of the Island Master. One could imagine how powerful her mind control techniques were. The soul-suppressing orb that was lent to Zhu Sheng a month before the martial arts competition was yours, right? Bao asked. To be able to help Zhu Sheng break through her mind suppression, the owner of that soul-suppressing orb was definitely not ordinary. Yes, Junior Sister's soul-suppressing orb. Wen Ninglan smiled and admitted. Senior Aunt Yin Ro came to borrow it, so I had to take it. I heard that it caused some trouble for Senior Sister Bao. It's not really trouble. If you fought with me and controlled the soul-suppressing orb personally, there might be some trouble. Bao scratched her head. Her actions were very natural. Oh, Wen Ninglan looked surprised, and the smile on her face deepened. She said, Senior Sister Bao is as confident as ever, giving people a sense of pressure. However, today's battle with Senior Sister, I might bring more than just a little trouble. After Wen Ninglan finished speaking, she slowly raised her jade-like hand. Following her movement, an extremely powerful Emperor light surged from her body. Layers of dazzling Emperor's rings appeared frequently. There were not only 8 layers, but 9 layers. Buzz! A roar came from the training ground, as if it was filled with surging Dao willpower. A terrifying Emperor's aura spread out, shocking the disciples of the 9 branches. The chief disciple of Crimson Pearl was also a path validation Emperor and had reached the peak of path validation with her mind techniques. Haha, Senior Sister Yin Ro, you didn't expect this, did you? On the main seat, Crimson Pearl Island Master smiled at Yin Ro. You just broke through? Yin Ro glanced at her. A month ago, she went to Crimson Pearl Island to borrow the soul-suppressing orb for Zhu Sheng. Although she felt Wen Ninglan's aura surging at that time, there were no signs of a breakthrough. She must have become an emperor in the past few days. Crimson Pearl Beautiful Dew Flower, Ninglan broke through its essence and peaked at the peak of path validation. Crimson Pearl Island Master replied. Junior sister is playing a game. Yinro was slightly moved. The Sea of Beautiful Dew Flowers was a sacred land sealed by Crimson Pearl Island. However, it was extremely dangerous. Each of the 8 branches had a mysterious land. Her 100 Spirits Island naturally had one as well. However, in terms of danger, the Sea of Beautiful Dew Flowers was undoubtedly the most terrifying place among the 9 branches. The slightest carelessness could lead to the death of a disciple. Crimson Pearl Island Master had opened the Sea of Beautiful Dew Flowers for her disciple and allowed her to enter the path validation. Now, it seemed that when Ninglan's Dao will power had increased by more than 1 level. Not only had her path validation realm increased, but her Dao will power had also undergone a sharp change, just like Baoer's bloodline Dao flame. This battle would be a little dangerous. We are both island masters of the 9 branches. Senior sister is also Baoer's mother. You even took out Zhu Sheng's longevity staff. Baoer must have something to rely on. Crimson Pearl Island Master asked cautiously. In the battle with Fu Ye, Zhu Sheng would not have been able to fight to such an extent without the longevity staff. Naturally, Yin Baoer must have Yin Baoer's trump card. I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. Yin Rose said calmly. Senior sister, what do you mean? Crimson Pearl Island Master was puzzled. Why was she still unwilling to say? You'll know when you watch the battle. Yin Rose smiled faintly. Give Baoer an emperor weapon? What emperor weapon? Everything depended on the girl's strength. This was the real challenge. Only when the dream branch of the 9 branches landed in Baoer's hands could it unleash its power. Why is an Emperor Lord again? At the resting area, Zhu Sheng woke up. She looked at the lead disciple with 9 Emperor rings circling around him and felt a little worried. Baoer has always been the unluckiest among us. Li Lifeng smiled bitterly. It was already difficult to defeat Zhong Liqing. Now, she had met with Ninglan, who was good at spiritual control. However, Baoer was strong when faced with strong opponents. She was good at spiritual spells. Since she could defeat Zhong Liqing, she might not lose this battle. I hope so. Zhu Sheng looked at the other disciples of the 9 branches. She glanced at the second seat of Phoenix Flower and the lead disciple of Golden Dew. Putting aside Zhong Liqing and Wen Ninglan, there were still 2 more Emperor Lords waiting for Yun Baoer. It would be too difficult to get the Dream Branch. You and I are both good at spiritual attacks. Let's decide the winner directly. At this moment, Baoer said to Wen Ninglan. A layer of spiritual light appeared on her body. She felt the strong spiritual power of her opponent, but her expression did not change. That's what I was thinking. When Ninglan's expression suddenly became serious. Both sides knew each other's spiritual power very well. They did not need to fight, so there was no need to hide. They could directly suppress each other with their spiritual power. Whoever was stronger would win. Chapter 1852. Endless light shone from Wen Ninglan's body as her 9 emperor's rings shone brightly. The will in her body rumbled. She reached out her hand and condensed a translucent magical orb. It was like a dazzling crystal ball that emitted a powerful spiritual wave. With a buzz, a powerful spiritual wave swept out from the dojo. The disciples of the 9 emperors' rings who were closer to the battle felt their minds churn. They felt a stabbing pain as if they were being invaded by the will of the Great Path. Bao, and Wen Ninglan were facing each other from a distance. They were the first to be affected by the powerful spiritual wave. At this time, an emperor's crown appeared above her body. It shone brightly and shone a beam of light that enveloped her. It seemed to isolate her from the spiritual wave. Wen Ninglan took a step forward and pointed her right hand at the soul-suppressing orb. A torrential mental storm was stirred up, and dense mental rays shot out in all directions, cutting through everything. The dojo was shattered, and a terrifying mental net fell on the other side. Baoer felt the power of the great Tao pressing down on her. The crown on her head became more and more dazzling. Thousands of rays of light shot into the sky and transformed into a surging sword mark. With a pu sound, it pierced through Ninglan's mind net. The blood in her body churned. The power of her divine veins that she was born with swept forward and blasted in front of Ninglan. At this moment, two flaming eyes pierced into Ninglan's eyes. Her mind suddenly shook, and her body swayed a few times. The light of the soul-suppressing orb seemed to have dimmed a little. The monarchs of the 5 realms were watching the battle attentively. Many of them closed their eyes and used their psyche power to sense the battle. Yunbao, and Ninglan were both monarchs who were proficient in psyche attacks. Their battle could not be judged from the surface. Psyche attacks seemed invisible, but the invisible danger was more dangerous and thrilling than real combat. Many emperors were not good at spiritual attacks. They could not sense the specific situation of the two parties. They could only analyze from the aura. Yunbao did not look too good. She seemed to be gradually suppressed by her opponent. Her emperor's will was weakening, and her face was turning pale. Boom! A ring of terrifying energy spread out from the center of the dojo. The emperor saw that the emperor's light that the two were bathing in was extinguished at the same time. Yunbao's step shook. She groaned and blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. Was he defeated? Zhu Sheng stared at Crimson Pearl's chief disciple, Ninglan. The other party's complexion was normal, and her aura was stable. She stood in place without moving. She had stepped into the Tao confirming Emperor realm and was controlling the soul, suppressing or personally. The power she displayed was indeed much stronger than when she relied on the soul-suppressing orb alone. Could it be that Bauer had really lost this round? Senior sister is amazing. Junior sister admits defeat. Just as everyone was puzzled, several cracks suddenly appeared on the soul-suppressing orb in Ninglan's hand. A mouthful of blood sprayed to the ground, and her body nearly collapsed to the ground. Her originally normal complexion took a turn for the worse, and her eyes became unfocused. It was as if she had suffered an extremely severe mental suppression. If your realm wasn't unstable and you couldn't perform the essence of power Upanishads that a sovereign emperor should have, I'm afraid I would have lost this battle. Val raised her hand to wipe the sweat off her face and said weakly, competing with Ninglan in terms of mental attacks was much more difficult than directly fighting with a sovereign master. That was why she had won by a hair's breadth. If senior sister had become a sovereign emperor, I wouldn't have had to fight this round. Ninglan smiled bitterly. Looking at the cracks on the true soul orb in her hand, she was filled with helplessness. Then, she straightened her back and said, "Congratulations, senior sister. You have a double kill and enter the 3rd round. You have to do your best." Without waiting for the result to be announced, Ninglan turned and left the dojo, giving off a carefree aura. Phoenix Flower Chief, who was hosting the ceremony, saw this and shook her head with a smile. She officially announced Yunbao's victory. Ninglan admitting defeat was the best proof of this battle. There was no need to doubt it. On the main seat of the dojo, Crimson Pearl Island Master's expression was slightly ugly. As her master, he knew best how strong Ninglan's mental Tao intent was. Even if her disciple had passed through the sea of beauty flowers and refined her Tao intent a second time, she was still no match for Yunbao, who was in the 7th stage of the Tao confirmation realm. The position of the little princess of the 9 bloodlines was unshakable. After 2 rounds, those who have won both battles step forward. The Phoenix Flower Chief disciple shouted solemnly. Instantly, silhouettes stepped forward and stood at the front of the dojo. Phoenix Flower 2nd seat, Sikong Shu, and Phoenix Flower 3rd seat, Sikong Shu's junior sister. 100 Spirit Lineage, Yunbao, Zhu Sheng. Brush Teeth 2nd seat. Crimson Pearl 2nd seat. Wu Huang 1st seat. Ming Guang 1st seat. Golden Dew 1st seat. Peach Life 1st seat. No more and no less, just 10 people. These 10 people were the disciples with the best results. Among them, except for Golden Dew 1st seat who tied with Dark Blue Zhong Liqing, the rest had won 2 battles. The 9 Pulse Martial Arts Symposium relied on strength and luck. Of course, these 10 people were not the strongest of the 9 pulses. Some had advanced because of luck. After all, Zhong Liqing and Wen Ninglan's cultivation were obvious. If they had not met Yin Bao, and had bad luck, they would have qualified for the 3rd round. Unfortunately, Zhong Liqing lost one battle and tied the other. Wen Ninglan won one battle and lost one battle. It was a pity that she missed the opportunity to compete for the sacred object of the 9 pulses. Grandmother Zhu, the Phoenix Flower Chief Disciple, said respectfully. Grandmother Zhu looked at the 10 people in the dojo. Her kind eyes looked at each of them with admiration. She nodded and said, "Good. Our Phoenix Flower sect has been passed down for so long. In the future, we will need you to continue. Today, you have all performed well. I'm very satisfied." The 10 people in the dojo smiled joyfully. Grandmother Zhu slowly stood up and said with a serious expression, "There are no rules in the 3rd round. There are no restrictions. Release all of your abilities and compete together. The one who obtains the dream branch first will be the goddess of the 9 pulses. In the future, she will be in charge of the Phoenix Flower sect and command the 9 islands." After Grandmother Zhu finished speaking, she gently waved her walking stick in the air. The wind and clouds in the sky changed. A sapling of a peach tree, accompanied by peach blossoms, began to grow rapidly in the sky. Endless holy light surrounded it. In the blink of an eye, it grew into a peach tree that was 10,000 feet tall. Millions of flowers bloomed, and the branches were as magnificent as the streets of a city. A ball of brilliant light floated at the top of the peach tree. In the light, there was the shadow of a folding fan. The indescribable might of the imperial armament descended, falling on the dojo and pressing on everyone's head. The will of the great path spread from the ancestral land of the Phoenix Flower sect to the entire North region. Rays of brilliant light extended for thousands of miles like the branches of a peach tree. It seemed to have spread to the entire North region and controlled the entire region. The sacred object of the 9 pulses, the Dream Branch. It's the imperial armament of a senior who is closest to the divine path. In an instant, the monarchs of the 5 realms stood up from their seats after witnessing this shocking scene. Their eyes were filled with admiration and passion as they looked at the top of the peach tree. Through the dazzling divine light, they could feel the supreme aura of the great Tao, as if they had seen through the heavenly Tao. Jin Shun, Mo Luo, Sky Trampling Sect Master, and Feng Junfei. Hyuning, the clan leader of the Shuo clan, the Golden Ape Lord, the demonic Peacock Emperor, the overlords, and countless people at the Imperial Tao ceremony couldn't help but feel the urge to worship it. It wasn't an imperial armament, but a god standing in the sky and looking down at them. This is the weapon of the first ancestral patriarch. Sikong Shu, the second seed of the Phoenix Flower sect, said dreamily as she looked at the peach tree in a daze. The disciples of the 9 pulses, including the elders and the island lord, had never seen the original form of the dream branch. Only the current Phoenix Flower sect master was qualified to control it. Then they saw the sacred object of the 9 pulses for the first time. The Dream Taker is the goddess of the 9 pulses, the future Phoenix Flower sect master who will command the 9 islands. Golden Dew's heart trembled. This had always been her master's dream, and now it was about to fall on her shoulders. Bauer also looked up at the sky and fell into a daze as she was immersed in the beautiful peach blossoms. But she soon came back to her senses. She was only a bit excited and didn't want to compete as much as the others. This 9-pulse martial art competition wasn't too important in her eyes. She only participated to win some face for Bai Ling and to prove herself to Yunro. If she got the dream branch this time, would her relationship with her mother return to how it used to be? It wouldn't be like this anymore, as if they didn't know each other. Zhu Shan took a few deep breaths and retracted her gaze from the peach tree. She looked at Yin Bao who was beside her. There were no rules or restrictions. The 10 of them would compete together. The one who obtained the dream branch first would become the current generation goddess of the 9 branches. In the future, she would wield the phoenix flower and command the 9 islands. Of course, Zhu Sheng did not have any thoughts about Mengji. She knew Mengji's ability and weight. Compared to the supreme overlords of the five realms, her talent was actually not outstanding among the most outstanding group of people. Even in the 9 veins of the phoenix flower, Sikong Shu, Zhong Liqing, Wen Ninglan, and the chief disciple Golden Dew, which one of them did not have better talent than her? She didn't have any hope of getting it. But Bauer did. She could admit that she wasn't as good as others, but Yin Bauer couldn't. She wouldn't allow it. Right now, Zhu Sheng's situation was actually very bad. The previous 2 rounds of martial arts battles had exhausted her physical strength. It was already not enough for her to support the next battle. She originally wanted to give up, but the rules set by her grandmother made her change her mind. She could not withdraw. If she gave up now, what would Bauer do? No matter how strong Yin Bauer was, she couldn't take the dream branch from 8 people at the same time. So, she needed help, especially since Sikong Shu had a junior sister following her. They came from the same source. At this time, the advantage of 1 pulse could be shown. Whichever pulse had more people would have a higher chance of winning. In fact, her grandmother seemed to be preparing for the 3rd round in the previous 2 rounds. Zhu Sheng didn't give up now. She would be of some help to Bauer, even if it was just a little. What are you waiting for? Go on, Zhu Sheng shouted. Her voice was very ear-piercing. Then, ignoring the injuries on her body, she grabbed Yin Bauer and flew into the sky. They followed the peach tree all the way up to the sacred item, the dream branch. She didn't wait for her grandmother to announce the start. Since the rules were set, there was no need for an announcement. Zhu Sheng's mind became very sharp at this time. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Sikong Shu, her junior sister, the first seat of Golden Dew, and the other competitors were all afraid of falling behind. They all used all their strength to charge against the sky. That girl is smart. Grandmother looked at Zhu Sheng for the first time. She didn't seem to know what to call her. She's injured like that, but she's still fighting. Sigh. The great elder of the 100 spirits pulse couldn't help but sigh. He looked at Yin Ro in the host seat. The island lord had set Zhu Sheng as Bauer's opponent. Wasn't that a helping hand? Emperor weapon? Emperor technique? In the end, it couldn't compare to a sincere heart. Chapter 1853. In the sky above the training ground, the competitors of the 9 branches were sprinting with all their might. They moved along the huge trunk of the peach tree. The lush branches intertwined with each other as they moved through them at their maximum speed. Among the surging streams of light, Sikong Shu and first seat Jin Lu took the lead. The 2 of them were the fastest, shaking off the others. They even overtook Bao and Zhu Sheng, who had started ahead of them, and began to move side by side. During this process, no one made a move. Any unnecessary movements or distracting thoughts would interfere with their progress. No one was stupid enough to waste their energy at the beginning. They even hoped that the others would be entangled with each other. The monarchs raised their heads and looked at the sky. The 10,000 feet tall peach tree was extremely majestic. It covered the sky and the sun like a towering fortress. The gaps between the thick branches were like endless wormholes. The disciples of the 9 lineages shuttled through the wormholes with nimble movements. In just a short period of time, the 10 of them had reached the waist of the tree from the bottom. Next, the most exciting scene of the martial arts competition is about to take place. Swordmaster Hyuning said. The distance between them had been pulled apart. Under such circumstances, the disciples with the advantage would definitely expand their advantage and even eliminate some of them. This would be a chaotic battle. The strong would expand their advantage while the weak would band together to fight against the strong. It was not only a battle of individual strength, but also a clear mind and keen observation of the situation. Feng Hua was indeed the #1 overlord in the north. Her method of selecting successors was very innovative and challenging. It could be used to train the disciples of the Sword Palace. Bauer, don't worry about me later. Find a chance to kill them in one strike. Zhu Sheng's breathing was very heavy. Drops of cold sweat flowed down her cheeks. Her face was pale. She forcefully activated Dilly. Her internal injuries were worsening, but she looked at Yin Bao with a determined gaze, conveying her thoughts. Bao pulled Zhu Sheng and ran forward. Her slim figure nimbly shuttled through the wormholes. She naturally understood what Zhu Sheng meant. Since the other party had said such words, it meant that she would create an opportunity for her to attack at all costs. But in this way, Zhu Sheng would be in a huge predicament. At this moment, Bao Er's heart was touched. In Bai Ling, she and Zhu Sheng were rivals, but they were also close martial sisters. Sometimes, Zhu Sheng understood Bao even better than Bao Er herself. Zhu Sheng was prepared to sacrifice herself to help Bao Er. Bao was not a pretentious person, but Zhu Sheng's actions still touched her. There was no response. There was no need for mushy thanks. Bao silently held Zhu Sheng's hand. The two of them seemed to become one. The surging emperor's light became even more resplendent, like a shining star as they chased closely behind Sikong Shu and Chief Golden Dew. Sikong Shu and Chief Disciple Golden Dew were like two flying arrows. The moment they moved, they had the absolute advantage in the group. However, they did not pull too far away from the others. While maintaining the lead, they continued to advance at a constant speed. It was as if they had discussed this beforehand. Each of them took one side of the peach tree, not interfering with the other. Their powerful emperor will also firmly suppress the people below. Do it. Yin Bao Er's breath was rapidly approaching. The group of 10 was halfway through their journey and had reached the waist of the peach tree. There was not much time left for them to compete. In order to avoid any accidents, they had to act decisively. Otherwise, once they reached the top of the tree, the situation would be difficult to control, and it would be easy for others to take advantage of the situation. Buzz! Buzz! Two huge sound waves spread out. Incomparably resplendent Emperor's rings bloomed under Sikong Shu and Chief Golden Dew's feet. Their figures stopped advancing at the same time. At the same time, the Emperor-level cultivators' frightening Dao might rolled downwards. They each struck out with their palms. Sikong Shu and Chief Golden Dew had already taken two sides of the peach tree. Their emperor had almost sealed off the space for everyone to advance. Suddenly, they attacked. The emperor's light, carried by their palms, was like two crescent-shaped light waves. They invisibly bit together and gathered into a blinding halo. It wrapped around the trunk of the peach tree and crushed downwards, suppressing everyone indiscriminately. Be careful, Zhu Sheng warned. This Dao might that swept over was extremely powerful. There was almost no blind spot to dodge. Faint flames flickered in Bao Er's eyes. A layer of patterns was branded on her eye chakra. Her vision suddenly became exceptionally clear. Her senses were also pulled apart. She was prepared to find the loopholes in Sikong Shu and Chief Golden Dew's Dao might. After all, the two of them were not of the same origin. Even though they both cultivated the flower celestial art, their emperor techniques could not be perfectly embedded together. Whoosh! A straight line shuttled through the edge of the two crescents. That peerless speed was like a gust of wind blowing in front of Sikong Shu. Her hair fluttered in the wind. Sikong Shu raised her head and looked up. Yin Bao and Zhu Sheng had dodged. However, Sikong Shu was not surprised. If Bao could be easily suppressed by her in one move, she would definitely not be the little princess of the 9 meridians of the past. Sikong Shu and Chief Golden Dew did not chase. To them, it did not matter if Bao took the lead. Their goal was to clean up the other competitors. At this moment, the two terrifying crescent-shaped palms merged together and filtered downwards. After Bao and Zhu Sheng, Chief Golden Dew and Chief Peach Life, who were the fastest, were the first to be affected. Break! A sturdy woman who was much stronger than an ordinary girl shouted. Her emperor's light tumbled and wreaked havoc on her body. Endless dilly meandered and turned into dazzling armor that covered her body. A tiger-headed heavy spear appeared in her hand. She stabbed it forward. An extremely shocking explosion sounded. A crescent-shaped, palm-shaped light shattered within the spear light. Puff! At the same time, Chief Golden Dew spat out blood. He felt as if all the bones in his body were about to fall apart. His body suddenly sank down several dozen feet. Then he once again climbed up with his spear and arrived in front of Sikong Shu. "Junior sister, you have such vigorous strength." Sikong Shu smiled. Her gaze fell on the opponent's armor. She knew that this was the supreme emperor's art of Wu Huang's lineage. It condensed wool into armor and was extremely powerful. Moreover, it was said that Chief Golden Dew's bloodline power was perfectly compatible with the will condense armor. It was as if she was born with this emperor's art. Second senior sister, Bauer has already gone over. Instead of chasing her, you've come to kick me out? Chief Golden Dew clenched his teeth and roared as if he had been treated unfairly. Because compared to Bauer, dealing with you will save more time. Sikong Shu smiled. She pointed her finger downwards. An incomparably dazzling sword light pierced through the void and instantly arrived in front of Chief Golden Dew. The sword sound was mixed with the terrifying cry of a phoenix. "You've gone too far." Chief Golden Dew flowed around her body. Her originally heavy armor bloomed with light and suddenly transformed into a set of light silver armor. At this moment, her speed was countless times faster. The tiger head heavy spear in her hand also transformed into a thin spear. She dodged the attack in time and thrust out her spear. The spear light left her hand and pierced towards Sikong Shu. As expected, your bloodline is most suitable for will condense armor. Junior sister's talent allows you to change your armor according to Wu Huang's art. You can even change the attributes of your armor. I really can't underestimate you. Sikong Shu's expression was slightly serious. To be able to sit on the position of chief disciple of one of the 9 lineages, the eldest disciple of any of the islands, could not be underestimated. She raised her sword finger, and the sword will of the great path flowed around her body. The 9-layered sword under her feet circled around, and a shocking light was born on the peach tree. Then, the light exploded, and tens of thousands of sharp sword shadows appeared in the void. Countless thick branches of the peach tree were pierced and cut into pieces. Looking up, the scene was extremely shocking. Damn it! A furious roar of disbelief was heard. Then, Island Lord Golden Dew, who was watching the battle, saw her favorite disciple's armor shatter and fall from the peach tree. Chief Golden Dew was eliminated by Phoenix Flower's second disciple, Sikong Shu. Boom! There was another ringing sound. In the next second after Sikong Shu succeeded, on the other side of the peach tree, a sky full of golden pearls scattered down, mixed with the wretched sound of zither strings snapping. The chief disciple of the peach faction had also been eliminated. Sikong Shu and Golden Dew made their moves. The team of 10 was immediately reduced by 2 people. It became a competition of 8 people. Let's go. After finishing off her opponent, Sikong Shu transformed into a beam of light and shot into the sky. Her body seemed to be covered by a huge phoenix shadow. She started to chase up. Golden Dew did the same and chased up. Although they had defeated 2 pseudo-imperial lords at the peak of the 8th tier Dao Proving Realm, this short moment gave the others a chance to break through. At this moment, not only Yun Bao and Zhu Sheng went over, but the other disciples of the 9 lineages also took advantage of the chaos to get closer to Mengji. Just as they were about to reach the top of the tree, Zhu Sheng said to Bao, "Leave me behind, and you can be faster. Also, I can help you delay the others." Bao looked down and sensed Golden Dew and Peach Flower's auras falling. Moreover, looking past the giant branches, she could see 2 extremely dazzling imperial lights rushing over. They were the auras of the perfected Dao Proving Realm. If you aren't ruthless, you won't be able to stand firm. The 9 Meridian's divine daughter doesn't just need to have outstanding talent. She also needs to be decisive and ruthless. Don't abandon me. Zhu Sheng urged again. Sikong Shu and Chief Disciple Jin Liu were extremely fast. Be careful. Bao. Er's hand loosened and her speed suddenly increased. Like a disconnected firecracker, She stepped into the air and shot up with a boom. Zhu Sheng smiled with satisfaction. This way, she only needed to struggle a little, and it would be enough to delay the competitors for Bao. The slightest difference could lead to a great loss. As the most outstanding disciples of the 9 lineages, even this seemingly small struggle could change the final result. Then, whether she succeeded or failed would depend on Bao. Haha, senior sister Zhu Sheng, have you been abandoned by senior sister Bao? Then you can go down. A voice that was mixed with resentment came from below. Then, they heard the loud roars of beasts. There was more than one. When Zhu Sheng looked down, he saw countless phantoms of ferocious beasts crazily pouncing over. Behind the densely packed phantoms of beasts was a petite little girl who was dressed in extremely revealing clothes. Fenya was the second seat. The 4th island of the 9 lineages, Foya, was skilled at controlling beast souls. He hunted demonic beasts and refined their souls for his own use. Then he used the will of the Emperor to recreate beast phantoms and kill cultivators. In the second battle of the martial arts competition, Fenya had been defeated by Zhu Sheng. In that battle, Fenya relied on the suppression of his realm and was defeated by Zhu Sheng's will of the way of life. He became the laughingstock of the 9 lineages. Now that Zhu Sheng was alone and had been seen by Fenya's junior sister, she naturally had to wash away her senior sister's shame and get back on the stage for Fenya. Roar! Countless beast phantoms, supported by the will of the Emperor, pounced and bit as if they were real living creatures. The strong smell of blood coming from the beasts' mouths made Zhu Sheng feel slightly nauseous. I didn't wait for senior sister Sikong and Jean Lu, and I fell into the hands of Fenya's second daughter. I'm a little unhappy, Zhu Sheng said with a bitter smile. However, an eye for an eye, it was not unjust. Zhu Sheng endured the serious injury and channeled Dilly. Traces of green light spread out and slowly gathered in front of her into a sea of bamboo. Boom! An incomparably majestic, blood-red, demonic flame fell from the sky and smashed into the herd of beasts. The flames burned through the beast phantoms condensed from the will of the Emperor and hit the little girl who had exposed her teeth. At this moment, a third scream rang out from the peach tree. A petite figure filled with the smell of barbecue fell toward the training ground with tears in her eyes. You? Zhu Sheng looked at Yin Bao in shock. We'll meet sooner or later. They won't let me do as I wish, so let's end it here. Can we still fight? Yin Bao smiled slightly. Chapter 1854. If there were no rules, then there were rules. This meant that obtaining the Dream Branch was one thing, and bringing the Dream Branch back to the training hall was another. In other words, even if Bao obtained the Dream Branch, it would still be forcefully taken away by Sikong Shu and Golden Dew unless she eliminated all the competitors before that. Therefore, she had to return. In addition, leaving Zhu Sheng to bear all the danger alone made her feel uncomfortable. She felt like a deserter. This was not the style of a 100 Spirits disciple, and it was not Bao's style either. Zhu Sheng looked at her with excitement in her eyes. Team up? It seemed that she and Bao had never worked together before. Today was the first time in their lives that they were working together. Boom! Boom! Just then, 2 loud noises came from below. A surge of Emperor intent surged, and the powerful force caused the surrounding peach blossoms to fall. The peach trees were also shaking. Bao and Zhu Sheng looked down and saw several balls of Emperor light flying towards them. Midway, the 2 fastest figures were caught up by the people behind them. In an instant, the second seed of the 5th island, Jiangzhu, and the first seed of the 7th island, Mingguang, were shot down from the sky. Their bodies fell from the peach trees to the ground. So powerful. Zhu Sheng looked at the person who attacked. Phoenix Flower, Sikong Shu, the first seed of Golden Dew, had defeated all the competitors with one move, reducing the 10-people team to 2. After Wu Huang and Tao Sheng were eliminated, there were now 5 competitors eliminated. Among them, the second seed of Fu Ye was suppressed by Bao. Bao Er's gaze descended on his Sikong Shu and first disciple Jean Lu. The two balls of surging emperor lights in her field of vision grew closer and closer, and the Tao insights that swept over were extremely surging. She clearly sensed that the strength of the auras of these two people was even stronger than Zhongli Qing and Wen Ninglan. Perhaps the battle between First Disciple Jean Lu and First Disciple Dark Blue seemed to have ended in a draw, yet they'd actually concealed their strength. Bauer stood quietly, waiting for her opponents to arrive. Xikong Shu and Golden Dew were indeed stronger than Zhongli Qing, but they could not shake her heart. Buzz, buzz. Two terrifying sound waves descended. Xikong Shu and Golden Dew were faster than expected. In the blink of an eye, they had arrived in front of Bauer. They each stood on a huge peach tree branch, and emperor light flowed around them as they smiled at Bauer. In addition, there was another woman besides Xikong Shu. 8 Tao verification halos spun beneath her feet. She was Xikong Shu's junior sister, the third person from the Phoenix Flower sect. In the air far away from the Tao field, on top of the peach tree, 5 people stared at each other, and an oppressive pressure began to fill the air. Apart from the 100 Spirits bloodline, all the other competitors from the other 9 bloodlines had died. Only 7th level Tao validation Yun Bao, and 6th level Tao validation Zhu Sheng were left in this space. Their opponents were 2 perfected Tao validation Emperor Lords and an 8th-stage Tao validation powerhouse. Bao, why didn't you pluck the Dream Branch? You missed such a good opportunity. Senior sister feels sorry for you. Xikong Shu chuckled. You make it sound like it's true. Bauer pursed her lips and looked up at the top of the tree. If she had won the Dream Branch, she would have gone over long ago. Bauer, give up. In this contest, you and Zhu Sheng have no chance of winning. Chief Golden Dew said. She was older than Bauer and had also been born in the 9 bloodlines. She had joined the sect at birth, so, in terms of seniority, she was slightly higher than Bauer. If I had known that senior sister Lian Han was the chief disciple of Golden Dew, I might have withdrawn, Bauer replied. Lian Han's identity in Golden Dew was not a mystery. She was just an ordinary disciple, but the chief disciple of Golden Dew was a mystery. Who would associate an ordinary disciple with the chief disciple of the Island Master? It was only today that Bauer learned that Lian Han was the illegitimate daughter of the Island Master. Martial Uncle Golden Dew had caused trouble this time. After all, the 9 bloodlines were not allowed to form a family for the position of Island Master. If one wanted to form a family, they would have to step down from the position of Island Master. However, Martial Uncle Golden Dew had hidden this from the Island Masters of the 8 bloodlines. As Lian Han's identity was made public, the Island Master Golden Dew had also made it public. Right now, the 9 Bloodlines Martial Arts Symposium was the most important thing, so it was not convenient to deal with it for the time being. However, after the event, Bauer was certain that Martial Uncle Golden Dew would not be able to become Island Master and would be severely punished by the 9 bloodlines. She might even be imprisoned. However, Lian Han was innocent and was still a disciple of Golden Dew. If she had seized the Dream Branch this time, perhaps the 9 bloodlines would have dealt with the Island Master with a lighter punishment. It's not too late to know now. Bauer, I must get the Dream Branch for my mother, Lian Han said. She clenched her fists slightly, and her eyes flashed with incomparable determination. Senior sister is wrong. Your opponent's focus is not on me. Even if I withdraw, do you think you can beat senior sister Xikong? Bauer replied. Moreover, Xikong Shu had a fellow disciple of Phoenix Flower supporting her. 1 against 2. How could Lian Han be so confident? That's not something for junior sister to worry about. Lian Han silently glanced at Xikong Shu. Compared to Bauer, the cultivation of the second disciple of Phoenix Flower was more real. The strength of a Tao-proving emperor was apparent at a glance. However, Lian Han could not see through Bauer. She did not dare to underestimate Bauer, who was in the 7th stage of Tao-proving realm. She would rather fight Xikong Shu than Yun Bauer. How about this? Senior sister Lian, let's work together to take down senior sister Xikong and kick the chief bloodline out. Then we'll fight it out. What do you think? Zhu Sheng suggested. Dealing with two small Dao-proving realm cultivators was easier than dealing with a Dao-proving emperor and an 8-stage Dao-proving realm cultivator. Junior sister Zhu Sheng, you're vicious. Sikong Shu's face darkened. If Yin Bao was so easy to deal with, she and Lian Han would not have left her until the end. They would have eliminated her immediately. This won't do, that won't do, and you're trying to trick us into giving up. Zhu Sheng spread her hands. She was so innocent. How could she target her and Bao like this? Don't waste time. The choice is in your hands. Sikong Shu looked at Lian Han. It seemed that the two had made a decision before. In that case, don't blame us for bullying you. Bao, your potential threat is too great. Lian Han sighed. She slowly raised her hand. Endless golden halos gathered under her palm. They grew stronger and stronger, as if they had turned into countless pearls, exuding a terrifying might. Do it. As Sikong Shu's 8th-stage Dao-proving realm cultivator's voice fell, a long phoenix cry surged from her body. Majestic sword intent raged. She pressed her sword finger, and tens of thousands of peach branches swayed wildly. Between the lush leaves, endless sword light fell, and a sword rain shrouded Zhu Sheng. At the same time, an even more shocking sword light erupted from Sikong Shu's position. An incomparably dazzling sword light appeared in her palm. It wasn't condensed from sword intent, but a real Empyrean artifact. The Extreme Supreme Emperor Sword was shaped like a phoenix's divine feather, and it emitted billowing flames of the great Tao. She directly slashed her sword towards Bao. The terrifying sword aura swept through countless huge peach branches. Go! Lian Han spat out a word. Her fair, jade-like hand waved gently, and a dazzling golden pearl burst out from her palm. Although its momentum wasn't as fierce as Sikong Shu's sword aura, its light was sharper. It also shot towards Bao's position, the second seat of the Phoenix Flower Realm and the first seat of the Golden Dew Realm. The two Dao-proving realm cultivators joined forces to deal with Emperor Yuan, who was in the 7th stage of the Dao-proving realm. This shocking scene caused the countless Emperor Masters in the training ground below to be shocked to the spot. Hyuning looked at the fierce battle that broke out in the sky. He never thought that Bao would cause the two strongest Imperial Lords among the competitors to join forces to attack her. This was completely different from his previous guess. Logically speaking, either Lian Han or Sikong Shu should join forces with Bao to deal with one of the Imperial Lords first. After all, the strong needed to expand their advantage, while the weak needed to work together to deal with the most threatening person. How to turn around now? The two most competitive Imperial Lords actually joined forces to suppress the seemingly weak Yun Bao. Could it be that Bao's threat was greater than that of the Imperial Lords? She's very impressive, no less than her father's. Jin Shen trembled and couldn't help muttering. In the eyes of Sikong Shu and Lian Han, it was obvious that they thought that Bao was more difficult to deal with than the other party. That was why they did something that wasn't befitting of an Imperial Lord. Two Imperial Lords joined forces to suppress a 7th-stage Dao-proving realm cultivator. Jin Shen felt ashamed for them. If it were Jin Shen, he would rather die than do this. He wouldn't even bother to make a move against a 7th-stage Dao-proving realm cultivator. After all, Bao was of Dinda's noble bloodline. If the battle between Bao and Zhongli Qing amazed everyone, then her victory over Wen Ninglan was enough to prove that her strength was indeed qualified to fight head-on with the Imperial Lords. With a 7th-stage Dao-proving realm cultivation base, she had stepped into the ranks of the Imperial Lords. But at this time, Sikong Shu and Lian Han teaming up to deal with Bao wasn't just amazing. In the land of the East Continent, and even the 4 regions of the Divine Wilderness, who had ever received such treatment when they were in the 7th-stage Dao-proving realm. Even the battle between Qin Hao and Yuan Shidao back then wasn't as eye-catching as his daughter at this moment. After all, at that time, Qin Hao was at the peak of the 8th-stage Dao-proving realm. He fought an Imperial Lord and an 8th-stage Dao-proving realm cultivator to a draw. Once this child's Tao foundation stabilizes, she will be amazing. The imperial lords of the 5 realms began to discuss. The so-called stable Tao foundation naturally meant that they had reached the peak of the Tao proving realm. In the eyes of the imperial lords, all emperors who had yet to step into the Tao proving realm were just disciples of the Tao proving realm. Only when one reached the peak of the Tao proving realm could one be considered a true imperial lord. At that time, in the vast East Continent, who would be Yunbao's opponent? She was now in the 7th stage Tao proving realm and could compete with 2 imperial lords of the Tao proving realm. Just thinking about her reaching the peak of the Tao proving realm was enough to send chills down one's spine. Feng Gaishi's gloomy eyes stared firmly at the sky. The more he sensed, the more he felt that the aura exuding from Yunbao's body made him feel both familiar and hateful. It was very similar to Li Chuji back then. This woman must be related to Dendi. At this time, Feng Gaishi secretly glanced at the main seat of the training hall. The war tower was sitting there with an exceptionally cold expression. Perhaps Feng Gaishi should do something. No matter what the relationship between Yunbao and Li Chuji was, as long as they were related, the war tower would definitely take action. Feng Gaishi was looking forward to how the war tower would deal with Yunbao. Would it be like back then, killing her with a single palm strike? Gradually, a happy expression appeared on Feng Gaishi's face. Boom! Thousands of feet high in the sky, a terrifying storm of Tao power swept out from the huge peach tree. Endless streams of sword Tao light fell rapidly, sealing the space where Zhu Sheng was. The 3rd seed of the Phoenix Flower Realm was in the 8th stage of the Tao Proving Realm. She had enough ability to suppress Zhu Sheng and get rid of this troublesome person beside Yunbao. Zhu Sheng raised her head and looked at the endless streams of sword Tao light falling. The whistling of the sword Tao was mixed with the long cry of the phoenix. It was as if they were sucking into her divine soul, causing her mind to be in a mess. This was the Emperor technique of the first bloodline of the Phoenix Flower Realm, the Phoenix Firmament Sword Intent. Its domineering power was comparable to the flower-plucking hand. She was in the 6th stage of the Tao Proving Realm. Moreover, she was seriously injured. There was no way she could withstand the supreme sword formation of an 8th stage Tao Proving Realm Emperor. But at this moment, Zhu Sheng slowly smiled. The longevity staff in her hand loosened slightly. She suddenly raised it and threw it into the distance. Chapter 1855. See Luke Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Lightning. Amidst the flames, a jade-green scepter flew past them, containing a surging Tao will of life. The 3 disciples of the Phoenix Flower sect looked at the scepter with astonishment. With this throw, Zhu Sheng had actually thrown the longevity scepter at Sikong Shu in Lianhan. Her target was not the 3 disciples of the Phoenix Flower sect, but to obstruct the 2 emperor lords from confirming their Tao. It's useless. Why bother? The 3rd disciple retracted her gaze and turned to Zhu Sheng. The moment the longevity scepter left her hand, Zhu Sheng's already weak aura completely dissipated. The emperor light around her disappeared. Her emperor will have been injected into the longevity scepter when she threw it. At this moment, even without the 3rd disciple of the Phoenix Flower sect, Zhu Sheng could not even stand straight. She was no longer a threat. Even so, the 3rd disciple of the Phoenix Flower sect did not stop. She would not allow any accidents to happen. Endless streams of sword Tao light still fell on Zhu Sheng. However, the 3rd disciple of the Phoenix Flower sect deliberately weakened the power. Her emperor will resonated with the sword Tao, and the falling sword Qi dimmed a lot. Qi. The sword rain fell, and countless peach branches were broken by the sword Qi. Zhu Sheng's body fell crazily to the ground along with the peach blossoms in the sky. However, her gaze was still on them with a satisfied smile on her face. She had done what she needed to do. Next, the 9 Pulse theory of martial arts will be the stage for Yunbao, Sikong Shu, and Lianhan. As for the third disciple of the Phoenix Flower sect, Zhu Sheng had chosen to sacrifice herself. Naturally, she had to drag someone down with her. At this moment, the third disciple of the Phoenix Flower sect watched Zhu Sheng fall. She did not sympathize with her. This was how it was when it came to martial arts. The dream branch had to be inherited by the most talented person. It was rare for someone like Zhu Sheng to be able to persist until now. What? Suddenly, a strong sense of danger crept into her heart. The temperature of the surrounding space rose abruptly. A scorching chi wave came from behind her. The third disciple of the Phoenix Flower sect felt a strong, burning sensation on her back. She turned around. Zhu Sheng is waiting for you. Yin Bao's body was wrapped in flames as she appeared in front of the third disciple of Phoenix Flower sect. Terrifying lava flowed on her palm as she pressed it towards the third disciple's chest. The third disciple's expression changed drastically as he shouted. He pointed his finger forward and a brilliant sword light shot out. Looking from afar, the sword light looked like a huge phoenix pouncing on Yun Bao's body. In just an instant, the phoenix was extinguished by the flames, and the resonant sword will also dissipated. When Yun Bao's palm pressed on the third disciple's chest, the third disciple's body was covered in flames as he fell from the sky. Second senior sister and Lian Han were actually unable to directly destroy the obstacles set up by Zhu Sheng. The Phoenix Flower sect's third disciple had this question in his mind. Zhu Sheng was truly despicable. Even after being eliminated, she still wanted to drag someone down with her. In the next moment, endless darkness attacked, and the will of the Phoenix Flower sect's third disciple fell into the red lotus tyrannical fire. Boom! The towering peach tree let out a deafening roar. The moment the longevity staff flew out, the will of the Tao of life erupted. A jade-green radiance spread out and condensed into an endless bamboo forest. It seemed to have formed a tall bamboo wall. Sikong Shu's slash and Lian Han's pearl light bombarded the thick bamboo wall. With a bang, the huge bamboo wall collapsed and was easily pierced through. A jade-green staff that had lost its luster flew out and landed in Bao's hand. At the same time, the sword radiance and the pearl radiance continued to strike Bao. Naturally, Zhu Sheng couldn't stop Sikong Shu and Lian Han. She drained Dilly and poured it into the longevity staff. Then, she used Bai Ling's Monarch weapon to release its Dao aura to slightly hinder her opponents. This wasn't difficult at all. Unfortunately, the Phoenix Flower sect's third disciple believed too much in Sikong Shu's strength, to the extent of neglecting his own situation. So Bao succeeded in one strike. Zhu Sheng was eliminated, but Bao won a split second for Bao. She also eliminated Sikong Shu's junior sister. In this way, Bao could fight Sikong Shu and Lian Han without any worries. After all, an 8-stage Tao-confirming cultivator couldn't be ignored. Bang! Bao swung the longevity staff in her hand. The jade-green staff was enveloped in demonic flames. The flaming blade swept out and scattered Sikong Shu's sword chi. Bao grabbed at the void, and the pearl radiance was crushed by an invisible claw. It was the flower-plucking hand. Zhu Sheng is very attentive to you, Sikong Shu said calmly. Out of the 30 competitors of the 9 branches, only the 3 of them were left. The goddess would be born from the 3 of them. She would hold the dream branch and command the 9 branches. Senior sisters, are you still going to team up? Yin Bao looked at the 2 of them. Sikong Shu had a supreme monarch weapon, the divine feather sword. Lian Han must have something to rely on as well. The 2 monarchs both had monarch weapons. This battle would be an unprecedented challenge and test for Bao. If you withdraw now, you won't have to face our pressure, Lian Han said. You have no chance of winning. Maybe, but I want to see the 2 of you fail even more. Don't cry when the time comes, Bao replied with Zhu Sheng's tone. Bao, you've gone too far. Sikong Shu waved the divine feather sword in her hand. With a slash, endless monarch light erupted. Dozens of huge divine phoenixes flew out and pounced on Bao. Each divine phoenix phantom was like an indestructible sword radiance. Lianhan didn't stay idle either. Since persuasion was useless, she could only fight. She raised her finger above her head, and a dazzling halo condensed at her fingertip. It became more and more dazzling. Suddenly, her finger pointed at Bao, and a dazzling pearl radiance burst out. 9 pearls flew out from her fingertip and turned into a sharp ray of light that seemed to pierce through everything. Bao Er's arrogance made Sikong Shu and Lianhan somewhat unhappy. They were also the strongest disciples of the 9 branches. How could 2 monarchs lose? Impressive. Fortunately, I'm not a pushover. Bao Er felt the attack of the great path descending. The phoenix cloud, sword will, of the second seat of the phoenix flower had reached the realm of perfection. The will of the sword and the will of the great path merged perfectly. Every sword could slash out a divine phoenix that was like a living creature. The sharp screech could even disrupt one's mind. It was terrifying. Lianhan also couldn't be underestimated, and she hadn't revealed her ultimate move yet. Bao already had a hard time fighting one person, let alone 2 monarchs. If it was a month ago, she felt that there was no need to fight. However, the simple-minded uncle also left her a trump card. It was a super strong soul power. Although it wasn't born, it was condensed and formed. Bao still didn't know how much of its power she could use. However, this soul power gave her some confidence in defeating the 2 monarchs. After all, this soul power was more terrifying than her innate flame of the way. Fire. Bao let out a long cry that shook the sky. The power of the blood in her body rolled. The Red Lotus Overlord Fire transformed for the second time. As the power of rules that even she didn't understand operated, the dark red color gradually turned black. It swallowed everything and withered everything. Even the peach branches around her were withering. The peach blossoms that fell off were like flowers of death. The pitch-black flames spread over the longevity staff. The power of the 2 extremes of life and death merged strangely, forming a storm of the great path. It was like a divine furnace that enveloped Bao Er's body. The piercing cry of the phoenix was heard. The phantoms of the divine phoenixes pounced on the black divine furnace. At the same time, an extremely powerful sword aura pierced through everything and disappeared into the black storm. Boom! An extremely terrifying sound shook the sky. The monarchs watching the battle below all looked over. They faintly heard a muffled groan. Then, the raging black storm in the sky shattered. An injured body flew backward and crashed heavily into a peach branch. The huge peach branch was broken by Bao Er, and the peach tree trembled. Sure enough, after the second transformation of the flames of the way, it still couldn't withstand the attacks of the 2 monarchs. It was suppressed by the power of the proving of the way. You still won't admit defeat? Lianhan said. A look of surprise flashed in her eyes. Was it all right? The aura emanating from Bao made her understand that this attack didn't cause much damage. How could a 7th-tier proving of the way be stronger than a monarch? Thunder. Bao raised the longevity staff and shouted to the sky. Boom! Crack! The world around the towering peak changed. Clouds wandered. Above the 9 heavens, there seemed to be streaks of thunder and lightning. They became denser and denser. Finally, the endless thunder and lightning intertwined into a violent sea of thunder. The illusion became reality. Endless thunder and lightning swallowed down and enveloped the entire peach tree. The peach tree seemed to be a thunder tree that supported the sky. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. The endless power of thunder and lightning gathered in one place. A figure stood there. It was Yin Bao. How is this possible? Yin Rose said in shock. She stood up from her seat. Her eyes were full of surprise and disbelief. If Bao Er's flames of the bloodline had transformed a second time, she wouldn't be surprised at all. But where did this will of the Thunder Emperor come from? Above the peach tree, billions of thunder and lightning swam wildly. Many peach branches were torn apart by the thunder and lightning. Even Sikong Shu and Lianhan seemed to be restricted. They fell into the turbulent flow of thunder and lightning and frantically distanced themselves from Bao-Er. The might of the way that spread out clearly told everyone that the thunder and lightning that wrapped around the peach tree couldn't be an imperial law. It was the real will of the emperor, driven by rules. Yin Ro raised Yin Bao-Er single-handedly. She didn't know that the girl had the third bloodline in her body. In addition to the flames of the bloodline and the powerful spirit elemental crown, she also controlled the power of thunder. The war tower smiled silently. A whole month of hard work hadn't been in vain. Almost all the war immortal guards were mobilized to plunder the thunder spirit treasures and ores of the 5 realms. One of the 3 immortals of Penglai, the supreme great emperor Mu Xinjiao, who had the best forging skills, didn't sleep for a whole month to make 3 soul protecting thunder for Bao-Er. The sunset war god also personally sealed the divine thunder with his supreme fighting will and injected it into Bao-Er's body to refine her soul. In the end, one of the 9 elements of desolation, the divine thunder, and the 3 supreme thunder tools were all assimilated with Bao-Er, completely becoming a part of her body and power. In this month, they were really exhausted physically and mentally. Now it seemed that the effect was very good. Although Bao-Er had used the power of the divine thunder on the island in front of the honest uncle before the martial competition, in these few days, the power of thunder that Bao-Er released again was obviously stronger than the day of the fusion. Moreover, she would be more proficient in controlling it in the future, and its power would be greater. Looking at the thunder and lightning wreaking havoc in the sky, and the peach tree that ancestral grandma, Fenghua, evolved from was completely invaded by Bao-Er's will of thunder, War Tower felt satisfied and relaxed. In fact, he was really a little worried just now. Sikong Shu and Lianhan's talent and imperial law were extremely strong, even stronger than Zhongliqing. It was almost impossible for Bao-Er to win against them at the 7th stage of Dao Vindication. This was a very crazy thing to the outside world. Now, War Tower had confidence in his heart. The red lotus, tyrannical fire, and the divine thunder had fused together. The power of 2 weaker Dao Vindication was nothing. The lethality of the elements of desolation alone was enough to shake a Dao Vindication Emperor Lord. As Foster Father said, Sikong Shu and Lianhan may be doubting their lives after this battle. War Tower laughed silently in his heart, but his external face was still cold and stern, giving people the attitude of an insufferably arrogant powerhouse. Chapter 1856. High up in the sky, the giant peach tree was covered with lightning. It was dazzling and magnificent. Waves of terrifying lightning flowed and gathered at the same spot. There, Yin Bao-Er's body erupted with majestic black flames. The flames were filled with endless lightning. She was like a god who controlled lightning and fire. She stood in front of Sikong Shu and Lianhan. The aura she emitted caused their expressions to change drastically. Sikong Shu and Lianhan floated in the air and did not stand on the peach tree. At this moment, the giant peach tree was completely occupied by lightning. Bao-Er's rules and emperors were everywhere. She had become the absolute ruler. Surging lightning streaked through the air. Both Sikong Shu and Lianhan's expressions turned ugly. It was too domineering. The black flames and lightning on Bao-Er's body intertwined, forming a brand new will. It was filled with powerful destructive power. This power was enough to threaten an emperor. At this moment, she had the ability to fight head-on with Sikong Shu and Lianhan. We can't drag this out. Let's end this quickly. Lianhan was slightly nervous. She was afraid that Yin Bao-Er had yet to use her will. Her potential was terrifying. Sikong Shu nodded. She stroked the divine feather. The Supreme Emperor's sword exploded with sword light. A huge phantom of a divine phoenix appeared and enveloped her body. Sikong Shu's emperors will began to rise in the phantom. The 9 emperors' rings were filled with shocking sword will. She shouted and swept her finger along the blade of the divine feather. The huge phantom burst out, shattering the space and extinguishing the endless lightning. Lianhan's hands formed a mysterious seal. The surging emperors will around her gathered in her palms. She pressed her palm down towards Bao. A layer of pearl light descended from the sky and formed a ring. It crazily wrapped around Bao-er's head. This ring contained a terrifying might of the way. Phoenix Heaven Slash. Bao raised the staff of longevity high up in the air. Endless lightning and fire snaked along her arm and gathered on the staff of longevity. The Phoenix Sky Sword will in her body was activated and a violent sword sound was heard. She swung the staff forward and slashed out with lightning and fire. Similarly, the shadow of a divine phoenix was born. It was covered in lightning and black flames and clashed with Sikong's Shu's sword will. Immediately, the two divine phoenixes exploded and were annihilated. The sword wills on both sides collapsed. Seal. Lianhan spat out, and the will of the emperor pressed downwards. The pearl-light circle fell from above Bao-er's head, trapping her in the center. In an instant, the frightening will of the way of ice spread out. Crack, crack. Extremely violent sounds of ice forming could be heard in the air. Boundless cold air began to spread from Bao-er's position, crazily spreading on the peach tree. In an instant, 300 miles were frozen. This towering tree, with flashing lightning, turned into an ice tree in the blink of an eye, emitting a sparkling, icy light. So cold, Bao felt as if her body was being sealed by ice. Even her blood was about to solidify. Even though the red lotus fire was still burning on her body, it could not stop the invasion of Lianhan's rules. The Frost Owl was Lianhan's law. Previously, she had only used the Golden Dew Imperial technique. Now that her law was pressing down on her, Bao had a new understanding of the strength of this first seat of the Golden Dew Imperial technique. In terms of the strength of her Imperial will, Lianhan definitely surpassed Sikong Shu. She was definitely the strongest person among the 9 meridians. No wonder she was so confident in telling Bao to withdraw. Even though Sikong Shu had a junior sister assisting her, Lianhan was not afraid at all. However, she was afraid of Bao. Traces of black lines appeared on her eye rings. The soul of the imperial crown shone brightly on top of her head. Bao's 10,000 spirit fire eyes saw through all illusions. Her powerful spiritual force penetrated the ice and directly invaded Lianhan's mind. Lianhan's face suddenly turned pale. She let out a muffled groan. Her divine soul was invaded by a spiritual force that disrupted her frost Dao will. The Dao that was suppressing Bao weakened slightly. Taking advantage of this opportunity, a violent flame burst out with lightning. It destroyed the power that was enveloping her body. The ring of pearls condensed into ice crystals that filled the sky and shattered. The frozen peach tree was once again swept by lightning. Good. Below, the imperial lords of the 5 realms who were watching the battle praised. Exciting. This trip was not in vain. The 9 branches of the Phoenix Flower sect were passed down from one sect. However, they had produced the unique imperial techniques of the 9 branches. Each branch specialized in a different field. The battle between the disciples of the number 1 overlord of the North Territory was a competition that the 5 realms had been looking forward to. However, the imperial lords were still deeply attracted by the battle in front of them. Yin Bao, Sikong Shu, and Lianhan were all peerless geniuses. In this battle, winning or losing was not important. No matter who obtained the Dream Branch, they would not disgrace the title of goddess. The talents displayed by the 3 of them were recognized by the imperial lords of the 5 realms. However, they still wanted to see who could suppress the universe in this battle, defeat the other 2, and become the pride of the Phoenix Flower sect. Phoenix Sky Ultimate. Sikong Shu shouted. The divine feather in her hand floated. Her imperial will resonated with the supreme sword. Chapter 1858. The cries of the phoenix filled the sky as the huge phoenix swept across the void. Sikong Shu rode her sword forward in a straight line. The sword light storm howled. Her body, the imperial sword, and even the phoenix formed by the sword were filled with torrential flames. It was as if the great Tao had flooded the sky. The light of a firefly dares to compete with the light of the Tianyang. Affected by the evil transformation, Bao Er's lips curled into a faint, mocking smile. She extended her finger, and mottled, evil light wrapped around it. With a flick of her finger, an evil aura shot out. It was like a faint gray flame that flew forward. However, the moment it left her hand, the gray flame expanded with a boom and became an incomparably huge Tianyang. It was like a gray meteor that smashed down. The great Tao trembled. Sikong Shu felt a strong sense of danger. She roared as she rode her sword forward. Her palms swept out with sharp sword light. The attacks were concentrated and all hit the meteor. However, it was difficult to shake it. Immediately, she pushed her palms forward at the same time. The 9 sword rings roared. An endless sword will flowed into her palms. When it came into contact with the meteor, it pressed down heavily. Buzz! There was a terrifying sound in the void. Everyone saw that Sikong Shu was standing on the imperial sword. Her will resonated with the imperial weapon, and her rule power was greatly enhanced. She was like a flaming phoenix that resisted the meteor's attack. The phoenix struggled crazily in front of the meteor. Unfortunately, it could not hold on for more than a few breaths before it suddenly exploded. Sikong Shu's will dissipated. She raised her head and spat out blood. Her hair was disheveled, and she fell with the imperial sword that had lost its light. The hearts of countless people in the training ground trembled. Yun Bao defeated an imperial master in one move. How terrifying was this evil power? Ice cavalry. Lianhan saw that Sikong Shu was no match for her. Naturally, she did not dare to hold back. She held the powerful scepter of extreme frost in her hand. She waved the scepter, and the ice will around her attacked, causing a blizzard. Countless ice cavalry wearing ice armor and riding hell warhorses were born in the blizzard. They were formed by her ice will and the death prison tower. These tall and mighty ice cavalry formed a formation and charged towards Bao Er's position. They had thick ice cavalry spears under their armpits that emitted dazzling light. They were like an invincible army. The scene was spectacular. The hell warhorses trampled across the sky, causing the sky to tremble. This Tao will. Countless martial emperors below were shocked. Even the famous martial emperors of the older generation in the 5 domains would have to fight back with all their might in the face of such an attack. In the end, he and Emperor Ziwei were killed by Lord John Lu. In that battle, Denda's evil might was monstrous. Junior still remembers it clearly. Now, Senior Feng Qi wants to end it just because you said so. That's not right. A sudden voice sounded in the training hall. Many people looked in the direction of the voice and saw Feng Gaishi smiling at grandmother ancestor who was sitting on the main seat. He said, "Why does Island Lord Yun Ro's daughter have the same evil energy as Dendi? Phoenix Flower Island, shouldn't you give us an explanation?" "My daughter, why should I give you an explanation?" Yin Ro suddenly shouted. Her cold eyes fell on Feng Gaishi as if they could pierce through his divine soul. "Hee, Island Lord Yin Ro, please don't be angry. My status is insignificant and my Tao power is insufficient. Naturally, I don't dare to ask for an explanation from you. However, many experts here are related to Dendi. Back then, he was crazy about killing like a mad demon. Most of the people he killed were from the overlords here. Shouldn't you give us an explanation?" Moreover, Feng Gaishi looked at Jean Lu silently. Jean Lu was sitting upright on the main seat. His hand was on the battle sword, exuding an overbearing aura. "Bastard!" Jin Shun was furious. He took a step forward and reached out his hand to grab Feng Gaishi's neck. "Jin Shun, what do you think you're doing?" The Wind Monarch rose to his feet and stood in front of Feng Gaishi. "Dong, The sound of footsteps was heard. It wasn't loud, but it seemed to have stepped on everyone's heartstrings. Jin Shen and Feng Junfei stopped and looked at the main seat. It was Zhan Lu. Zhan Lu was clad in the armor of the past. The dense and exquisite scales of the armor fit together perfectly. As he strode forward, his long hair fluttered behind him, revealing a large and striking scar on his forehead. On the training field, there was also the rhythmic sound of armor clattering. "Leave her to me. The martial art competition is over." Zhan Lu walked to Yin Ro with steady steps. His cold eyes were emotionless. He stretched out his armored hand and stared at Bao, who was unconscious. "Zhan Lu." Yin Ro stepped back slightly and squeezed the words out from her teeth. "Buzz, buzz, buzz." Beams of emperor light fell from the main seat. Each beam of qi was extremely powerful. Dozens of figures surrounded Yin Ro in the center. The island lords of the 9 lineages all looked cold. "Senior Feng Qi, I'm here to watch the competition. I'm not here to cause trouble, but don't force me to fight." Zhan Lu turned around and looked at grandmother Feng Hua. Feng Qi was her Taoist name. She was ranked 7th under the First Lord, so she was called Feng Qi. "Oh, if you're not here to cause trouble, then what are you doing now?" Grandmother Feng narrowed her old eyes. "This woman is related to Dendi. Dendi and the war god are brothers. This is not a matter of the Phoenix Flower sect.